each other and ensure that Lungu gets a dignified funeral. The Minister in the Presidency, Khumbudzo Ntshavheni, was speaking at a media briefing in Cape Town on the outcomes of yesterday's cabinet meeting. Lungu died in South Africa and there is a dispute in sending back his body for burial. The Zambian government approached the court in South Africa to halt his burial yesterday. Ntshavheni elaborates.
Cabinet has noted the judgment of the High Court of Pretoria interdicting the burial of the late President Lungu in South Africa after mutual agreement by the parties. Cabinet urges both the Lungu family and the government of Zambia to use the opportunity granted by the High Court to find each other to ensure a dignified burial of the late president in accordance with the honors befitting a state president.
The South African Weather Service has issued a level 2 warning for damaging winds for some areas in KwaZulu-Natal. The warnings are expected to persist from today going into tomorrow. Weather forecaster Nhlanhla Sithole says the strong winds could cause severe damage to infrastructure and further interrupt road and air transport. Recapping the top story, DA Federal Executive Council Chairperson Helen Zille has convened an urgent meeting of the party's FedEx following the sacking of Deputy Minister of Trade, Industry and Competition Andrew Whitfield. I'm on Delambana for SFM News Headlines at 3:30.
In your sports this hour, Proteas men's squad announced for the T20 Tri-Series, and Run Your City 10-kilometer organizers offer 100,000 rands incentive to Stephen Mokoka to break the record. More details at 3:30.
Winter in Nelson Mandela Bay is for getting out and not staying in. Get outdoors on a green flag hiking trail or go for a game drive at one of 15 private reserves right at our doorstep. Hit the beach or get on board with a whale watching cruise. Explore the historical heart of our city or come vibe with the locals on a township tour. There's so much to discover. Find Nelson Mandela Bay, South Africa on Facebook or visit nmbt.co.za. Nelson Mandela Bay, your winter and our summer destination.
A stage awaits, not for applause, but for possibility. For over 40 years, Standard Bank has championed the arts, and at the National Arts Festival, we don't just watch talent rise, we help grow it. Through our Standard Bank Young Artist Winners, raw voices find power, unseen stories take the spotlight, and what begins as a dream grows into a legacy. Join us in Makanda for the festival. Standard Bank, proud lead sponsor of B20 South Africa, an authorized FSP and registered credit provider.
It's a massive night of boxing this Friday in Thohoyandou at the Koroni Hotel and Casino. Current WBF Intercontinental Champion Akani Sambu from Malamulele trades punches with KZN's tough challenger Sabelo Tebekulu, while Mzansi's reigning queen Nosiakazu Dube defends the throne against Loveness Koka from Malawi. Limpopo's Kumulani Stonefist Nechamuchenzi clashes with the rebel Musitihwe from Botswana. Plus many more bouts. Who will survive? This is the Survival of the Fittest International Boxing Tournament. Catch the action this Friday, 27 June at 6 p.m. Streaming live on SABC Plus and SABC Sport on DTT Channel 4. Then on SABC 2 at 10:30 p.m. Proudly brought to you by Mama Rocks Boxing Promotions and SABC Sport.
For the love of the game.
Honey, what are you doing?
I'm stretching for tonight.
I thought you're not dancing at bachelorette parties anymore.
Baby, we need the money to put Johnny through matric mos.
And what's the police uniform for?
The clients feel safer when I wear it.
No, man, just sell your bakkie to We Buy Cars. They give the best prices and they pay you within minutes.
Okay, but can I just go and dance one more time, please? You know how much I love it.
No, the buyer's already on his way here.
Wow, okay.
Strapped for cash? Just sell your vehicle to We Buy Cars. The easiest way to sell your car by far.
They all believe they will be crowned champions, but gold medallions are reserved for the best of them all. It is the incredible clash of the 12 African women's national teams. Catch all the 24 matches of the Cap Total Energies Women's Africa Cup of Nations Morocco 2024 from 5 to 26 July 2025 on SABC Plus, S3, SABC Sport on DTT Channel 4 and SABC radio stations. Where Africa competes, South Africa connects. Proudly brought to you by SABC Sport. For the love of the game.
The National Pulse with Ashraf Garda on SAFM. You're listening to the National Pulse, weekdays 3 to 6 p.m.
So on a day where a deputy minister has been axed, and it just so happens the deputy minister belongs to the DA and not to the African National Congress, you just know there's bound to be a reaction. And the DA, I understand, will go into a very urgent meeting and will get some response from them later on, hopefully within this show. That's one thing. There's also been Donald Trump relatively quiet, but he has made some comments from his own platform around Benjamin Netanyahu that you may want to consider in terms of just getting to understand his mind. Yoweri Museveni confirming that he will stand for election again is something we must touch on. You also know that we've got this collaboration with Channel Africa around G20, so that comes up around 4:15. Looking forward to that conversation. And there's more, of course. There's this issue regarding this huge row, really, regarding Edgar Lungu. It's just not going away, isn't it? And what's more is, of course, the atrocious weather we've experienced in the Western Cape. We already know about the Eastern Cape a few weeks back, and now it's revisited South Africa, and then coming up to Gauteng and the northern parts in the next few hours. In fact, we can see the difference. So the weather and climate change, some of those issues we need to be talking about. Let's, however, get to some of the biggest issues that we have to talk about now in terms of where it is, and that's the Freedom Charter. My name's Ashraf Garda. Welcome to the show. Welcome to the National Pulse. As always, you can, you're in, welcome, doors open because you're listening in, but also you can engage on air. To do that, you can call in live when the opportunity comes up. Save this number, please, 086 000 2032, and then to WhatsApp, text or voice note 0614 104 107. And you don't have to wait for anything of that sort. You can simply go onto the X platform right away, Twitter, and then just use the hashtag The National Pulse when you tag SFM Radio and myself. And here's a big thought to you. Of all the things expressed within the Freedom Charter, how do you think that the Freedom Charter has practically manifested itself in the lives of the people of our country? Just think about that, because that's what we must talk about. It's 70 years now. Can you believe it? Today is 70 years since the adoption of the Freedom Charter. So we all know how significant it was then. How significant is it now, if it has shaped many of the policies of certainly many of the parties outside of Parliament during the apartheid era, and I would think beyond that as well. Well, let's get the opinion then of COSATU's Deputy Parliamentary Officer. That's Tony Ehrenreich. Tony, good to connect with you on the National Pulse. Hi.
Good afternoon. How are you, Ashraf?
I'm very good. It's been a long, long time, but perhaps no better day than connecting with you on 70 years of the Freedom Charter, isn't it?
Absolutely, absolutely. What a significant document and commitment of our country to its people.
Yeah. Why was it, let's start with that. Why was it significant then?
Well, I think for the first time then, even though people cooperated together in the anti-apartheid movement against apartheid, it was significant because all the organized sectors of society came together in Kliptown. So it was the African National Congress, so the whole Congress movement, including the Congress of Democrats, and I think the Colored People's Congress. So everybody was represented at the Freedom Charter, and they spoke both about what it is we had to oppose, but more importantly, they spoke about what it is that we want to build in South Africa. And we wanted to build, having learned of the horrors of apartheid, we committed to never repeating that, and to a set of values and commitments that would ensure that the country would have a great path into the future. So that's 1955.
So in fact, it was a wish list of groupings, whether you call them political parties, but certainly groupings, who were all hell-bent on one thing, in opposition to apartheid by and large, and trying to reshape the country the way we see fit based upon the human rights values that many of those parties had, right? So how then did it express itself, or let's call it this way, how did it manifest itself in the period from the time of the Freedom Charter itself, that day one, to, let's say, 1994?
The role that it played an incredible role in mobilizing our people. Of course, the first time people had a common vision. These were all Democrats in the country, people who believed that democracy is essential, that apartheid is wrong. So the people who came together to oppose apartheid then says, this is what we stand for. This is what we want to build in place of apartheid. And that served as the basis for mobilizing generations of people over decades on what the vision was for the future, and made sure that people then came together around a clear ideal about what it is we all stood for. So it became a rallying cry of the democratic movement in South Africa.
And if we now fast forward to 2025, do you get a sense that we truly understand the importance, the value, and the significance of the Freedom Charter?
Well, I think the political leadership understood it. They understood that there's a need to mobilize people around an idea that's bigger than ourselves, that's more noble than what had come before, and what could unite our people. So the leadership saw that, and it was an absolutely essential part of the struggle against apartheid. The challenge was, since it was adopted in 1955, those key values served to unite people and mobilize them to action. And so all of the incredible actions that people took in different ways to undermine the apartheid state and bring about a democracy was in large part because of what we strove for, but also what united us. The unfortunate distinction for me is that the Freedom Charter, when it talks about the doors of learning and culture will be open for all, the land will be shared amongst those who work it, essentially what it says to me is that we will grow the South African economy through redistribution. So we will undo the distorted distribution of our resources under apartheid to make sure that everyone's included, and that in itself would have the momentum of growing the economy and providing everybody with opportunities. The sad thing is, 2 years we had our democratic breakthrough. The government adopted what was the GEAR policy, and GEAR is fundamentally different to the Freedom Charter. GEAR is about redistribution following growth. So effectively, the kind of trickle-down economics we always hear about from the World Bank. And that's the reality that's confronted our people. We haven't been able to achieve the noble ideals laid out by the Freedom Charter because we haven't put in place plans to get there, deliberate actions. Instead, we had this GEAR policy that spoke about market fundamentalism and just leaving everybody to the rich folks, and they would take care of making sure that the society comes right. Well, 30-odd years later, we can see that that's not happened.
So if we look at it now, I mean, you've touched on the economic factors already, but, if I asked you, because, we can talk for an hour, we don't have the time, but if I asked you that to say, list 5 key principles that emerge from the Freedom Charter that are either then being practiced today or not being practiced, what would they be?
Well, I think the fact that we said that the land will be shared by all those who work it is not shared. Farm workers are still as disempowered as they were, and if anything, they've been kicked off of the farms into agricultural settlements, but they have not become joint owners of the lands that they built up together with the farmers. The wealth will be shared amongst all of our people. Well, clearly not. South Africa's has a greater levels of inequality today than what we had in 1994, which clearly says we're on the wrong path. The doors of learning and culture will be open for all. We're spending less on the black child's education now in public schools as a result of the austerity measures introduced by government, but yet the private schools where our political leaders and the old people who benefited from the apartheid system, those who have benefited from the grand theft of apartheid, they still have incredibly better educational opportunities that provide better prospects of the future than what's happening to the average black child. So all of the key commitments we've made has not been realized to the extent that it should have been. Instead, what we've seen is that the political elites and many of the other wealthies have assimilated them into the lifestyles of the white communities of the past and have largely distanced themselves from the solidarity that existed when we adopted the Freedom Charter in 1955, and that sustained the struggle against apartheid to bring about the changes that were meant to benefit everybody.
Okay, here's the last thing, just as we look forward. So this is what we have, like it or not. This is what we have, right? Now, the points you brought up about what's not working, what's not being adopted in practice, right? What do you think, therefore, South Africa as a country should and can do? And I use the word can because sometimes what should be done may not be possible. What is possible that needs to be implemented going forward? looking back at the ideals of the Freedom Charter and maybe sifting it through the realities of South Africa 2025?
Well, I think what's possible is we could have done a lot of great things. We could have dealt with more decisively with land reform. There has been some moves in that direction, but a lot more decisively. We have moved closer with educational standards, but it's not brought about the kind of equity that we wanted. So a bit more of the things that there was a commitment to do in practical terms by the government would have taken the country a lot further forward. We are a nation that's not as fractured as we were in 1994. So the process of reconciliation seems to be working well. Aside from those who want to hold on to the grand theft of apartheid, so those who ran to America and who goes to try and find white allies to fight their causes, that's, I think, aberrations. In general, our society is more united. We're working together. But as we go to the national dialogue, which is nearly Freedom Charter 0.20, here's an opportunity for us to reaffirm those key values and to tackle the failures that we have. So let's put in place the thieves from both the private sector and government as soon as we can. Let's make sure that we build a more equal society by making sure our politicians' remuneration is closer to the constituency that they serve. So there's many bold steps that we can take to build the features that would bring about the Freedom Charter's outcomes. That was the basic struggle or the liberation promise that our people united around.
Okay, let's end with this. Interesting you brought up the issue of this national dialogue, right? And you said it's Freedom Charter 0.20. So if that were the case, why do you think there's been so much opposition to it?
To the national dialogue?
Yeah.
Well, I think for two reasons. For one, the society doesn't trust the political establishment. If we look at how they've stolen, how they've distanced from the entire South African population, we looked at the perks and benefits in the ministerial handbook. All of those things have created a social distance between the political estate of South Africans. And so that's been the bottom line of our failures. And now for the politicians to introduce that notion, of course, it's going to be met with some skepticism. Personally, I think there's value in making sure that we reaffirm what we stand for and that we take out those key issues that we need today. So making sure that what the Zondo Commission referred to, that those people are fast-tracked to go to jail, that there's decisive interventions. So we have an opportunity now with this national dialogue to prioritize what it is that we want to see done and how we want to see it done. We left it for what we thought were credible politicians, but they were corrupted so easily by what is clearly empowered population that benefited from apartheid and who just wanted to bring in a few rich black people into their communities, not deal with the essential fault lines of apartheid.
All right, that's where we're going to leave it to Tony Ehrenreich, the COSATU Deputy Parliamentary Officer. And interesting that last point from Tony about the national dialogue. So would it be a case now of, or can we actually leave out what is bad in terms of where we are as a country and bring in what is good and be inspired even now by the Freedom Charter and implement some of those things that are practical and implementable within the national dialogue right now for the benefit of South Africa 2025 and beyond. This is, well, the National Pulse.
SAFM. Keeping your family healthy this winter can feel like a daunting task. Try the Lung Shield range. It includes capsules to support healthy lungs and immunity, a syrup for kids that supports the immune system and promotes lung health, and an effervescent with 13 essential ingredients to optimize immune function. Put your family's health first this winter with the Lung Shield range. Available without a prescription at leading pharmacies. Lung Shield, prescribed by doctors, recommended by pharmacists.
Gordon Ramsay is back, and your favorite kitchen disasters are still somehow in business. New season, same confused chefs, terrifying walk-ins, and enough grease to fry your Wi-Fi. Watch as Gordon tries to fix the unfixable with nothing but sheer rage, British sarcasm, and an iron stomach. Kitchen Nightmares Season 8, Wednesdays at 6 p.m. on S3. Come for the food, stay for the emotional damage.
The National Arts Festival is back. South Africa's biggest celebration of the arts is on. From the 26th of June to the 6th of July, Makhanda becomes the stage for South Africa's boldest theatre, dance, music, arts, comedy, and more. Experience the creative energy, markets, exhibitions, and many surprises. It's where the country comes to create and the world takes notice. Browse the program and book now at nationalartsfestival.co.za. Own it, celebrate it, be there. This Youth Month, SAFM celebrates the spirit, power, and potential of young South Africans. Join us as we dive into conversations that matter, from innovation to education and skills for the changing world, empowering youth for meaningful economic participation. Because at SAFM, we're not just talking, we're leading the conversations that move us. You're listening to the National Pulse on SAFM. SAFM.
So there we are. We'll take your calls just now, but you can actually tweet right away, and you certainly can WhatsApp immediately. The Freedom Charter, 70 years on, and I'm particularly interested in that part, is the national dialogue, the Freedom Charter 2.0, as Tony Ehrenreich suggests. But he also agrees that there's been a lack of confidence in how people govern. So what aspects of the Freedom Charter do we need to include in where we are as a country right now? And what do you think that may have been promised then is effectively rendered ineffective right now? Let's talk about effective, ineffective with what's happening in Uganda, because the Ugandan president is Yoweri Museveni. He's 80 years old, and he's now declared that he will stand for election again, not his first or second or third, the 7th term of office. Is that remarkable or not? With me, Dr. Chidochase Nyerere was a political analyst from the Thabo Mbeki African School of Public and International Affairs at the University of South Africa. Dr. Nyerere, appreciate you connecting with us on the National Pulse.
Thank you, Ashraf, and good afternoon to your listeners.
Thank you. First of all, is it any surprise that Yoweri Museveni has now confirmed that he will stand for a 7th term? I think once it's second and third and fourth, it really doesn't matter. It's effectively a type of a monarchy, isn't it?
Yes, so it's really not a surprise that Yoweri Museveni has declared his candidature, although he hasn't said it himself. But we know there are senior officials within his party who have confirmed that. And if anything is to be deduced from that, is that there isn't really a succession plan within his movement, within Museveni's political party itself, but also in terms of the landscape in Uganda, the opposition that is supposed to be challenging his candidature, seemingly they have a lot of challenges, but we could look into some of those challenges, because the temptation is that we always then conclude that the opposition is ineffective. Yet there are material conditions on the ground that make that near impossible to achieve.
So, let's understand this. Is he in a position where he can confidently stand for a 7th term because, A, he's so entrenched and there is no opposition insofar as the appetite from the people of Uganda is that it's Museveni or nothing? Or is it that opposition has been completely thwarted and therefore there's no opposition?
So a couple of factors are at play here. So the first one is that he's deeply entrenched. That we cannot debate. So if you look at the judiciary system and the legislative system in Uganda, of course, including the executive itself, it's all his people that surround him. So in the legislature, the majority form part of the legislature who come from his party. So it's clear that in terms of lawmaking, the lawmakers would tend to support their candidate, to support their movement. But also, if you look at how his son, Muhoozi Kainerugaba, if you look at how he's entrenched in the military and the intelligence systems, you already see that he has cushioned himself. He almost has insulated himself, either from a possible coup to take him out, but also using the law, right? The judiciary system seems to be in his favor. So if you look at the systems that surround governance and that surround election governance in Uganda, it's near impossible that any person who declares their candidature for the presidential poll will be successful. So it's near impossible. Hence, this wasn't really a surprise. It is expected until probably Museveni himself faces his demise or he steps down.
In terms of opposition, the name Bobi Wine comes up. So you're suggesting whoever it may be, Bobi Wine or whoever, in effect, they don't have a chance.
I don't think they have a chance. If you look at Bobi Wine, for instance, all opposition leaders, by the way, they seem to be targeted. It's either they are targeted, they are harassed, or incarcerated. If you look at Kizza Besigye as well, he was actually in Kenya when he was kidnapped. So it's a kidnap because he didn't face arrest lawfully and procedurally. And he was then taken back to Uganda and incarcerated. So in terms of opposition politics in Uganda, it is very difficult for any opposition candidate to face a successful campaign, because if you look at the Fourth Estate, it's very governed by the people that subscribe to Museveni's outlook of life. He believes that he is experienced, and that experience that he has gained over the years, it qualifies him to be the only candidate who is capable to run for that position. So it is very difficult for any opposition party. And also, within opposition, they face threats and they face co-opting by the party that Museveni belongs to. So it's also not so clear in terms of the opposition leaders where they actually belong to. Sometimes it's opposition which is formal, yet in terms of the structures and how it operates, it behaves exactly as the ruling party. So it's near impossible at this stage.
And just the last thing, very quickly, as we get to news, right? At the end of the day, whoever's leading is one thing. We can have that debate. But where is Uganda as a country going? I mean, are people experiencing a better life than, in the 6 previous iterations of the president of the country? Are there signs that actually this is a place that people want to live in and people are very happy because of how Museveni has actually governed?
Not at all. So if you look at ordinary Ugandans, although they differ in terms of their political orientation, it's very difficult for them to express their political views in an environment that is very polarized. So Uganda is very polarized. And because of that, it makes it nearly impossible for people to express themselves freely in terms of their political choices, for fear of ramifications and for fear of victimization. So unfortunately, it is not a working environment for anyone to be in terms of the politics of Uganda.
And let's leave it at that, because I think the big question unanswered is then what is the position of the African Union? I mean, just how democratic is Uganda in the first place? Dr. Chidor Chashe, the Nyeri, political analyst from the Thabo Mbeki African School of Public and International Affairs at the University of South Africa. Fascinating conversation. But there we are. We now know that Yoweri Museveni going for the 7th term of office at the age of 80. Can that happen in South Africa? I don't think so. Well, constitutionally it can't. But can it happen? No. Here's the news. It's just gone 3:30.
Thank you, Ashraf. On the news headlines, DA Federal Executive Council Chairperson Helen Zille has convened an urgent meeting of the party's FedEx following the sacking of Deputy Minister of Trade, Industry and Competition Andrew Whitfield. The Democratic Alliance in Gauteng says it has not yet received notice from City of Joburg Acting Manager Tsepo Makula on when the council will meet to elect a new speaker. And Iran's Supreme Leader Ayatollah Ali Khamenei says America gained nothing from its attacks on Iranian nuclear sites. A full update follows at the top of the hour.
SAFM, guiding you through the rush hour traffic.
Good afternoon. Starting off in Gauteng, the M1 northbound in Braamfontein has a crash near Car Street, the N1 southbound a crash at Baklu interchange, and the R21 southbound in Tembisa has a crash reported after Olifantsfontein Road. In KZN, the M13 westbound in Kloof is queuing at the top of Fields Hill. The N2 northbound has roadworks reported, one lane open before the Sabaya exit, and the M4 northbound has roadworks with traffic restrictions near the M7 highway. And in Cape Town, the N1 outbound has a crash reported before Okavango Road exit. With your traffic update, I'm Irma G.
Stay safe on the roads. SAFM is with you. This is SAFM Sports with Tuming Kapele.
Right, Jimmy, the people went to bed last night and say, oh my goodness, what happened to Mamelodi Sundowns? But there's always cricket to talk about, isn't there?
I was one of those people that actually said, oh, I'm so sad that Sundowns crashed out of the FIFA Club World Cup. But yeah, it is what it is. A very good afternoon to you, Ashraf. Starting off with cricket this hour, Proteas men's head coach Shukri Conrad has named a 14-player squad for the upcoming T20 International Tri-Series against host Zimbabwe and New Zealand, which is set to take place in Harare from the 14th to the 26th of July. Rossi van der Dissen will captain the side, which features 4 maiden T20 call-ups. They are Momentum Multiply Titans Dio Cohen Bosch and Luandre Pretorius, and Northwest Dragons batter Ruben Herman and Dufferbed Warriors spinner Sunaran Mutusami. Both Pretorius and Herman were among the breakout stars of the 2025 edition of the Betway SA20 for Paarl Royals. In football, Mamelodi Sundowns defender Grant Kakana says that the lack of killer instinct up front cost them a spot in the round of 16 of the FIFA Club World Cup. The Betway Premiership champions were eliminated from the tournament yesterday following a goalless draw against Fluminense, which was not enough to progress to the knockout phase. Sundowns beat Ulsan HD in the opening fixture, but dropped points against Borussia Dortmund in a 4-3 defeat before sharing spoils with their Brazilian counterpart at the Hard Rock Stadium in Miami.
Yeah, I think a good learning experience for us. A tournament that showed us, that we are capable and that we have the talent to compete, and we surely did compete. I think with all the games played, I don't think we were humiliated or over-dominated. To be honest, we just ran out of time. Yeah, I think in terms of quality, obviously Dortmund was the hardest one. A lot of good movements off the ball, very good, and they're very clinical in front of goal. And it's a game of small margins. I think the difference between us and being at the top, is the efficiency. We need to be a lot more efficient and a lot more clinical when we play for us to compete with the best.
Meanwhile, Orbit College coach Bugiso Makoya has hailed former SAFA technical director Walter Steenbok for reintroducing the cafe license coaching course, which he believes was a pivotal moment in his development as a coach. A second-half strike from Litsia Guapeng was all Orbit College needed to defeat Cape Town City 1-0 in a packed Olympia Park in Rustenburg, sealing their promotion to South Africa's top flight. Then Zambia captain Barbara Banda insists that their opening game against Morocco in the Women's Africa Cup of Nations won't be a walk in the park. The Cup Queens lost game against the Atlas Lionesses ended in a win for them and helped them qualify for the Olympics. Morocco and Zambia will face each other on the 5th of July at the Olympic Stadium in Rabat, and Banda says playing Morocco at home will definitely be a difficult task.
Preparations are going on so well, and playing Morocco is not an easy game, and moreover, we are playing them at home. They've got all the support, and they have the 12th player on the pitch, and we know, but we're trying by all means, trying everything possible that the first game is always important in the tournament, so we're looking forward for that game, and our aim is to go through first. We are taking each and every game at a step, so we're looking at that game very seriously, and we are taking it seriously because we know what it takes to to win the first game in the tournament. So that's our target, and we are aiming for the win on that day.
In athletics, the organizers of the Absa Run Your City 10-kilometer Stillwater Sports have offered 100,000 rands prize to Stephen Mokoka if he breaks the long-standing 10-kilometer Masters record at the upcoming Durban race on the 13th of July. The 40-year-old is aiming to surpass Kenyan Bernard Lagat's record of 27 minutes and 48 records set in Manchester in 2015.
No, for me, just if it's for one, I just set a goal target for myself, so it has nothing to do with whatever incentive that is there or what. I'm going to go out there and compete, as I said before, for an individual purpose and try to see if I can be able to reach the mark. So I don't necessarily need a certain motivation. I've already motivated myself by setting the target for myself. So all I need is just to be healthy and be ready on the day.
All right, then I'll have more on other sports in the next hour.
So just before I let you go, so I mean, we had this conversation before. So all things considered with Sundowns, one win, one
loss,
and one draw, but ultimately not good enough to get to the next round.
Unfortunately,
and I think as the soundbite you had, the player said, fine margins, and that is the reality of all sport. It is fine margins.
Unfortunately for Sundowns, I was really hoping that they can squeeze one in, but it just looked like it was not going to happen yesterday. Yeah. Unfortunately for them, they're coming back home.
Yeah, I think if they picked up a win, at least a draw when they should have in that second game, that would have made all the difference. But then fine margins.
Fine margins it is.
SAFM values your views. Be an active citizen.
Welcome back to the sun-drenched shores of St. Marie, where the beaches are beautiful and the murders are mysterious. It's Death in Paradise Season 7. New cases, quirky suspects, and D.I. Jack Mooney, who's still figuring out the island and how to drink coconut water gracefully. Catch the show where paradise meets puzzling crime, because even in paradise, someone always has a secret. Death in Paradise Season 7, Wednesdays at 9 p.m. on S3. Starts 28 May. S3, open up. S3.
A stage awaits. Not for applause, but for possibility. For over 40 years, Standard Bank has championed the arts. And at the National Arts Festival, we don't just watch talent rise, we help grow it. Through our Standard Bank Young Artist Winners, raw voices find power, unseen stories take the spotlight, and what begins as a dream grows into a legacy. Join us in Makanda for the festival. Standard Bank, proud lead sponsor of B20 South Africa, an authorized FSP and registered credit provider.
This week on FC Meets, former Moroka Swallows and Baroka dribbling wizard Sipho Moeti, affectionately known as Gobe, shares his rise from being worshipped at festive games to his inevitable rise to the Betway Premiership. He shares his story of disappointment, triumph and controversy. FC Meets, football made for community by community. Richard game. Tune into SABC Sport on DTT Channel 4, the Saturday at 6 p.m. Proudly brought to you by SABC Sport.
Ashraf Garda is streaming live now on Facebook, YouTube, and X at SAFM Radio.
So you do know that every Thursday we have this fabulous collaboration with Channel Africa, with both radio stations or channels. We have a chat together, myself on the one side, the anchor on the other side, and we talk about G20 issues. So that comes up again around 4:15. Do not miss that. We'll also have an update around the impact once again of the disaster in the Eastern Cape, because there's been some response to that, which leads me on to another issue, which is the issue of climate change. In the meantime, you can line up your calls and pick up any of the issues we've discussed so far, or something we haven't quite discussed but you want to raise anyway, because this is the National Pulse and you, I know, are on the pulse. Okay, let's talk about climate change then. So we know about South Africa's, the adverse conditions last week. And I mean, cold fronts are cold fronts. In the winter, that's not adverse. But there's a sense that, and in fact, the President, Ramaphosa, said when he visited the Eastern Cape, he said that with regard to the Eastern Cape only, right, as opposed to, say, the Western Cape, there shouldn't be any flooding during winter. And also said that the occurrence of floods highlights the severity of climate change issues that we as a country are facing. Some may say ditto the rest of the world, or we told you so. Well, let's find out more about it and how climate change affects all of us in our day-to-day lives. With me is Thando Lukuko, who's the Managing Director at Mansa Advisory. Thando, good to connect with you on the National Pulse.
Hi, Ashraf. Thanks for having me.
Do I take it as like a ticking time bomb, and if that's not the right word, and the pulses are racing regarding the impact of climate change on all of us?
Yeah, I mean, I think the period that we're currently in is really quite telling. I mean, if you frame it in this way, right, in terms of cause and effect, at the moment, what we're seeing are the effects of it, right? The flooding is a very, very direct image. Of course, it's not new now on our news, unfortunately, but it is devastating every time we see that it's something that seems to be happening in different parts of the country. And a contributing factor then becomes the infrastructure, right? A lot of the infrastructure with Durban's have been damaged. Eastern Cape's now been damaged. These are two provinces which typically don't have a very large resource base to be able to rebuild their economies. And then it exacerbates the inequities that exist in that society, certainly, but within the rest of the country. So even if a person might not necessarily think that it's there, but it's certainly showing itself. We're seeing the effects of it at the moment.
And if you look at the practical part, you see for most people, they hear about flooding when in the time when they shouldn't be flooding, and said, okay, there's climate change. Or if it's far hotter than it should be, then it's like, okay, that's climate change. I think, for example, I'm aware my sister lives in Canada. There's an absolute scorching heat wave in that part of the world, okay? And it's not summer there. Yeah. We know it's not, well, it is summer, but it should not be as hot as that anyway, right? For most people, they don't look at it at a macro level. Look at it how it affects them on a day-to-day basis. I mean, are we seeing the day-to-day changes of climate change and the impact it has on all of us?
The thing about the day-to-day in climate is that you wouldn't see climate change on a day-to-day in that you're looking at a long-term view. But if you look at it in terms of crops, for example, right? If the harvest time for crops changes, and we're seeing now that it harvests later than when it was supposed to, like May as opposed to March, for instance, part of the cause of that becomes climate change. So in time, the effects begin to show themselves. But really, in terms of what people then can do on a day-to-day, right, to just be very specific, is we need to improve our adaptive capacity. That's both at a household level, but also at a municipal level. Right. That means we need to look at how we might be able to finance it, to reprioritize something called climate adaptation, which speaks to the everyday changes that we might experience in different parts of the country. We need to be able to improve how we adapt to this changing environment. It's becoming a norm. We also need to look at what's called resilience or disaster risk management, because flooding is seemingly becoming a popular thing on our horizon. And so we need to look at the policies there. We need to look at how we strengthen up these aspects that are supposed to really protect us from this. And then the last one, if I could say, yes, sorry, let me not cut you.
No, carry on, go ahead.
So I was just going to say the last one is just to be what social media calls a Quran, right? We need to write letters, communicate to our political principles that, look, what are we doing about climate change? There's enough content, information out there that says we can rebuild. We knew that things were going to get worse, unfortunately, by the nature of this thing. How much are we doing? And that will help galvanize, I think, what is called political will, because there's so much pressure coming from citizens to say, like, what is being done.
Well, I mean, here's the thing. South Africa, in terms of what are they doing, South Africa's been very on-side regarding combating the impact of climate change. They've been signatories to very, very important, COPs and things like that. Something I think, for example, the USA has not been, right, or does not want to be a part of anyway, right? But having said that, when it comes to the day-to-day issues about what you said, a few minutes ago about just being able to manage the impact of climate change. Do I get a sense that on a day-to-day level, and I'm talking about local community level, because that's where we're all affected, that in fact the answer is nothing, because we are all, as a country, we are battling with the most basic needs on a day-to-day basis, hashtag potholes, hashtag no water, no lights, that really speaking for now it's a case of leave this for somebody else to sort out. We don't have budget for this thing.
No, I think saying doing nothing is a stretch. What I would say is that it's a difficult environment for sure. The thing to do is it depends from levels to levels, right? At a very communal level, I think what people can do is just, like I'm saying, number one, get in touch with organizations that might help you understand what exactly that we're dealing with, right? Number two is to then participate in some of these meetings, for instance, where the state is providing feedback on what they're doing on climate change. So is to really get involved in, so one of the things is public participation. You share your experience about how a particular thing might be affecting you. So people need to hear that because we live in different situations, and that's a very direct thing that a person can do. The thing about purchasing or using your money to buy ways in which to help you protect or weather the storm is great for those who can afford to do that, but not everybody is able to do that. But certainly we need to be able to look at ways in which we could support each other, and certainly getting involved in the process around solutions creation, I think, is probably the single largest and best thing a person can do.
Well, I mean, I think to end with, let me rephrase the last point I made. It's not so much a case of that we should do nothing about it. We obviously have to do something. I am saying, however, that the political decision makers at town halls are so hamstrung with low budgets that they really have shifted that off the priority list because there's someone who's there to say sort out the potholes or sort out the water. Clearly, they therefore deferred the inevitable, which is dealing with a global crisis, because the more urgent need is in front of them.
I agree with you 100%. And it's just, at the moment then, perhaps it's a question of, do we then reprioritize things a little bit, right? And certainly us getting involved in a conversation might bring that about. The good thing, if one could say, about climate is that there are commitments that are supposed to be coming from international. Then part of that requires political pressure. So if maybe we put the political pressure, it might add to the international community. But then I guess at the moment, I mean, I'm involved in some of the efforts that the country is up to. We're doing about as best as we can as a country to be able to get the kind of support that we need. And it's really, really just to us to apply pressure to some of our international partners as well.
Well, that's something has to give at some stage. Well, much appreciate your time by putting it on the agenda, and that's really what it is. Thando Lukuko, who's the managing director at Mansa Advisory, looking at the impact of climate change globally. We know that, but on a day-to-day level, can you not see that in your communities every single day? It's happening in front of you. Eyes open, eyes closed. It's happening. This is the National Pulse.
SAFM. If you think you cannot afford a lawyer, think again. Clientele Legal has made professional legal services affordable for you. Whether it's a civil, criminal, or labor-related matter, we have a nationwide panel of attorneys standing by to assist you. SMS SAFM to 32195. That's SAFM to 32195 and we'll call you back. Clientele General is a licensed non-life insurer and an authorized FSP. Standard rates and terms and conditions apply.
Keeping your family healthy this winter can feel like a daunting task. Try the Lung Shield range. It includes capsules to support healthy lungs and immunity, a syrup for kids that supports the immune system and promotes lung health, and an effervescent with 13 essential ingredients to optimize immune function. Put your family's health first this winter with the Lung Shield range. Available without a prescription at leading pharmacies. Lung Shield, prescribed by doctors, recommended by pharmacists.
Honey, what are you doing?
I'm stretching for tonight.
I thought you're not dancing at bachelorette parties anymore.
Baby, we need the money to put Johnny through matric, mos.
And what's the police uniform for?
The clients feel safer when I wear it.
No, man, just sell your bakkie to We Buy Cars. They give the best prices and they pay you within minutes.
Okay, but can I just go and dance one more time, please? You know how much I love it.
No, the buyer's already on his way here.
Wow, okay.
Strapped for cash? Just sell your vehicle to We Buy Cars. The easiest way to sell your car by far.
This week on FC Meets, former Moroka Swallows and Baroka dribbling wizard Sipho Moeti, affectionately known as Gobe, shares his rise from being worshipped at festive games to his inevitable rise to the Betway Premiership. He shares his story of disappointment, triumph and controversy. FC Meets, football made for community by community. Richencha game. Tune into SABC Sport on DTT Channel 4 the Saturday at 6 p.m. Proudly brought to you by SABC Sport.
Call us on 086 000 2032.
I absolutely need to hear what you have to say. If you're a first-time engager on air here or you're a regular, either way, I want to hear what you have to say. So to call in, you should know the number, but do save it if you haven't got it. 086, save it on your phone. That's it. Then you got it for life. 086 000 2032. Do you agree that your mobile phone is your book of life? Remember, the ID book was the book of life. It's changed, right? WhatsApp 0614 104 107. 30-second text really does, rather voice note helps, or text, or you can tweet it out, as some have done, using the hashtag The National Pulse. Ronald in Midrand, you first up. Let's talk about Uganda.
Yes, Ashraf, and to the listeners as well.
Thank you.
Yo, the old man, no. You see, there's a problem with Africa, our continent. Those who have no ideas are blocking ways for new innovative ideas to improve our continent or countries in our continent. What is that which is going to do now? That which he could not do in the past 6 terms, times 5 years, which amounts to something like 30 years. What is that which you can do new in a country that you couldn't do in 10 years? I mean, really?
Well, I agree with you, really. And yet, he leads. What control must he have then on the country, isn't it? Okay, I think Ronald's gone, but I think he's made his point very, very articulately, and there's more on Museveni.
Johnny Mahala here from Kabaga. It's obvious to anybody who studied Uganda for the last 50 years, post Apollo, and the post, that Museveni is a so-called liberation leader turned tyrant. He's a despot. He's a tyrant and a despot. I worked there for 5 years in the early 2000s, and I cannot speak more highly of Ugandan people. The human capital there is unbelievable, fantastic. 58 languages, deep culture, closeness to nature, inventive, ingenious. But Museveni, I don't know, he's a syphilitic, bent dictator.
Well,
he's lost his mind quite a long time ago, and he owns the army.
Well, you've maybe explained exactly why he's in power that long. I mean, the question is, how does the African continent tolerate it? I won't even go to the UN, because the UN, through its Security Council, tolerates a whole lot of other things that we won't even get into right now. But how does the African Union tolerate it? So we had a fascinating conversation about the Charter. We'll get to that in a moment. But Roy in the Eastern Cape, you've got some thoughts as well on Uganda. Go for it.
Well, thoughts, you said thoughts of Uganda. Let's go to Idi Amin. Let's see what he did to the Indians that were there and had businesses. They were given unfair deals to leave like immediately. And what he did not realize is that you threw out the financial brain of Uganda. And look what happened to Uganda. Look where they are. Maths is maths, sir. It's logical.
So what do you conclude from that? What I'm saying, yes, it's wrong to throw out people, but what are you saying now?
I'm concluding to karma. What you sow, so shall you reap. I may sound harsh, but if people know the conditions under which they were driven out to different countries, so if your brother got onto one plane and you got onto another plane, there was no cell phones and Google and all these things. You couldn't get hold of your brother. You lost contact with them.
Okay.
And they were given $90 and one suitcase. You were allowed to leave with $90 and one suitcase onto a plane.
Roy, you've made your point. Certainly a well-documented story about Idi Amin expelling people of Asian extraction living in Uganda, kicking them out effectively. And I'm paraphrasing. The sense was like, they're sort of poison to the country. I also understand, and maybe I must get my history right, that after a while those doors were reopened because of the fact that they lost the huge amount of human capital, which had an impact on the country. But if anybody knows the history better, please let me have it. Let's talk about the Charter. Let's get to. In fact, we're going to get to Vuyiswa firstly. Vuyiswa, hello.
Hi, how are you?
Yeah, I'm good
Thanks
indeed.
for taking my call.
Thank you. Right.
Yeah, I just want to weigh in on the Freedom Charter.
Yeah.
The Freedom Charter was a hijacked project, which the so-called liberals, they hijacked it. Because I understand I was not yet born. My parents were not even married, and they were still at school. But what I know is that Chief Albert Luthuli was not interested on it. He was not impressed because he was on house arrest. But he didn't
So
support
it was hijacked by who? I mean, I'm not very clear what you meant when you said hijacked.
I'm telling you, it was hijacked. Hello?
Yeah, I hear you.
It was hijacked by the so-called liberals because they were preparing their own future. Hence, it's not working for people are not gathering.
But what's wrong in the Freedom Charter?
You have these what call the people that come forever. You guys are profiling people that have been coming there, talking the same thing whenever it's time for us to celebrate this thing. I'm not celebrating it because I'm not I don't like it.
Okay, got that. Here's my point made. And you certainly
Yeah.
have saying effectively that was hijacked, the Freedom Charter. I wonder whether you concur. Here's another comment on the Charter.
Afternoon, Mr. Ashraf. Ashraf, we'd like to say happy birthday to Freedom Charter. We say happy birthday, Freedom Charter. I think a happy birthday to Freedom Charter. We also say rest in peace, Freedom Charter, because the people of South Africa, they failed to implement your Freedom Charter. With your good intentions of how South African to be guided, your vision and the implementation of yours Freedom Charter were never implemented. Rest in peace, Freedom Charter. But you are a good document. Thank you, Ashraf.
Okay.
It's Nati in Boksburg.
Thanks for that, Nati. Happy birthday, Freedom Charter. You were a good document. Rest in peace, Freedom Charter. All that in one go. Wow.
Hi, Ashraf. We now need to be left alone about this Freedom Charter. We were not there when these things were signed or whatever. All these Rainbow Nation, all those things. We were not there when all these agreements were made. And it has nothing to do with us. Because all we can say now is that none of those things are helping us, the majority of Africans in this country. So we just need to be left alone about those things. What we need, what we want, is economic justice. Economic justice. When we are economically free, maybe then we can consider, engaging in these things of Rainbow Nation, happy people, and all those things. Thank you. Sizowamash.
I tell you what, I suggest you read the Freedom Charter. You want economic emancipation, then go back to exactly that and see what it says about just that. There'll be comment from John Steenhuisen just now, from Parliament, about the axing of Andrew Whitfield just now. Let's get the news. It's 4 o'clock. Here's Ondela.
Thank you, Ashraf. Top stories at 4. DA holds an urgent meeting following Whitfield's removal, and Chabeni speaks on the relevance of the Freedom Charter. For SAFM News, I am Ondela Mbala, and a very good afternoon. DA Federal Executive Council Chairperson Helen Zille has convened an urgent meeting of the party's FEDEX following the sacking of Deputy Minister of Trade, Industry and Competition Andrew Whitfield. While the official reason for Whitfield's firing has not been disclosed by the presidency, the SABC understands that it could be linked to the party's deployee taking an unauthorized overseas trip. The FEDEX will meet later today to deliberate on the status and composition of the GNU in light of recent developments. The outcome will be made public after the meeting. The Democratic Alliance in Gauteng says it has not yet received notice from City of Johannesburg Acting Manager Tsepo Makula on when the council will meet to elect a new speaker. This comes after Nobuhle Mthembu was ousted by a vote of no confidence yesterday. 212 councillors voted in favour of her removal, while only 48 voted against her ousting. The motion was brought by political party Al Jama. According to the Local Government Municipal Structures Act, the election of a speaker must be done through a secret ballot. DA Johannesburg caucus leader Belinda Kaiser Echiozo Njoku says they are awaiting notices from Makula.
The election of a speaker must be done within 14 days. The process that follows is that the city manager would then issue a notice within 72 hours prior to the meeting to inform councillors that there will be a meeting to elect a new speaker. We are still waiting for the acting city manager to send out these notices and inform us when council will be sitting to elect a new speaker.
Minister in the Presidency, Khumbudzo Ntshavheni, says the Freedom Charter is still relevant in directing the redress of outstanding social and economic inequalities that still prevail. The Charter was adopted in Kliptown, Gauteng, 70 years ago. Ntshavheni was briefing the media in Cape Town on the outcomes of yesterday's cabinet meeting.
On the National Convention towards the National Dialogue, 70 years after the adoption of the Freedom Charter, and acknowledging that the challenges still facing our country require meaningful input from all of us, South Africans from all walks of life are invited to participate in a national dialogue that will determine the future of the South Africa we want. Like the adoption of the Freedom Charter, the national dialogue will follow an extensive consultation process, including at district and provincial levels.
The National Union of Mine Workers is today expected to conclude its 18th National Elective Congress with the announcement of its new leadership. The NUM organizes workers across the mining, energy, construction and metal sectors. Among those vying for the top position in the union is the current president, Daniel Balapile, who is seeking re-election. He is being challenged by his deputy, Philip Vilakazi. In a call for unity, Balapile has urged all delegates to accept the outcome of the election, regardless of who ultimately emerges victorious.
We have achieved a lot in these 3 years, but be as it may, the conferences and congresses of the union, they are dictated by our constitution, and the unity of members is sacrosanct to everything that we'll be doing, and even beyond the conferences, because our members have a right to have their own preference, but beyond that preference, whoever emerge, we expected that all members should rally behind the leadership that is elected.
Iran's Supreme Leader Ayatollah Ali Khamenei says America gained nothing from its attacks on Iranian nuclear sites. His comments come 2 days after a ceasefire ended a 12-day war between Iran and Israel. Israeli strikes on Iran killed at least 627 civilians, according to Tehran's health ministry. Iran's attacks on Israel has reportedly killed 28 people, an unconfirmed figure due to Israel's ban on the release of information relating to the 12-day war. The BBC's Will Vernon has the details.
In a video message shown on state TV, Ayatollah Khamenei congratulated the people of Iran on what he called victory over the Zionist regime. He praised the Iranian armed forces for breaching Israel's defences, saying the country was brought to its knees. The Supreme Leader also confirmed that US forces had attacked his country's nuclear facilities on Sunday, but claimed they failed to achieve their objective and accused President Trump of exaggerating what had been done. The Ayatollah offered more congratulations for Iran's retaliatory attack on a US base in Qatar 3 days ago, which he called a significant event.
Recapping the top story, DA Federal Executive Council Chairperson Helen Zille has convened an urgent meeting of the party's FedEx following the sacking of Deputy Minister of Trade, Industry and Competition, Andrew Whitfield. I'm Mondilambana for SAFM News Headlines at 4:30.
In sports this hour, Proteas coach explains missing Stars T20 Tri-Series squad. Chiefs to face Kotoko in the Toyota Cup, and Verstappen hoping upgrades can boost title defense at Red Bull home race. More details at 4:30.
SAFM, guiding you through the rush hour traffic.
Good afternoon. Starting off in Gauteng, the N1 southbound in four ways queuing towards Winnie Mandela Drive, the N3 northbound in Bedfordview queuing on the link to the N12 east at Giluli's interchange. The N1 southbound in Pretoria has a stationary vehicle near Rigel Avenue. In KZN, the M7 eastbound in Pinetown queuing towards North Dean exit. The N3 eastbound has a crash reported, as well as a stationary truck at Cliffdale, and the M13 westbound in Kloof queuing at the top of Fields Hill. In Cape Town, the N1 outbound is slow moving towards Okavango Road exit. On the R300 southbound, a crash reported before Hindle Road, and Voortrekker Road outbound slow moving through Maitland. With your traffic update, I'm Irma G.
SAFM 104 to 107 nationwide.
Got a Standard Bank business account and self-service banking? You could win up to 5,000 Rand cash every day this week in the Standard Bank self-service quiz. SMS Standard Bank self-service to 45787 for a chance to be selected. Answer 2 easy questions about Standard Bank self-service banking to be a winner. Tune in every day this week on the Midday Link-Up to see if it's you. Standard Bank. It can be. Standard Bank is an authorized FSP and registered credit provider. T's and C's apply.
This week on FC Meets, former Moroka Swallows and Baroka dribbling wizard Sipho Moeti, affectionately known as Gobe, shares his rise from being worshipped at festive games to his inevitable rise to the Betway Premiership. He shares his story of disappointment, triumph and controversy. FC Meets, football made for community by community. Richard game. Tune into SABC Sport on DTT Channel 4, the Saturday at 6 p.m. Proudly brought to you by SABC Sport.
The National Arts Festival is back. South Africa's biggest celebration of the arts is on. From the 26th of June to the 6th of July, Makhanda becomes the stage for South Africa's boldest theatre, dance, music, arts, comedy, and more. Experience the creative energy, markets, exhibitions, and many surprises. It's where the country comes to create and the world takes notice. Browse the program and book now at nationalartsfestival.co.za. Own it, celebrate it, be there.
SAFM music, crafted to make you feel real good. Handpicked just for your pleasure. Classics sounding so good, only on SAFM.
X at SAFM Radio and at Ashraf Garda.
So you know that we have this weekly collaboration with Channel Africa centered around G20. We're going to talk about that in terms of international relations and the absence of the USA at this point in time regarding South Africa and the G20 summit coming up at the end of the year. But someone asked me the other day about what's our top story at 2 o'clock, and I said I have no idea, because things on this show, the National Pulse, must reflect the day-to-day changes or the minute-to-minute changes that we have in our country. So with that in mind, let's get to certainly, potentially, one of the biggest issues, not just of the day, but I think could well be the week or the month, maybe of the year. The news of the axing of the DA Deputy Minister, and that's Andrew Whitfield, Deputy Minister of Trade, right? Significant because he comes from another party. There's no reason given by the President. It is his prerogative, so we understand. And the DA currently are now going to engage in an urgent federal executive meeting, as per Helen Ziller. But the DA leader, John Steenhuisen, was responding to the axing of Andrew Whitfield early on while he was in Parliament as the National Assembly considers division of revenue bill. But this is what he said about the axing.
But the facts of this matter contradict this flimsy reasoning. In fact, on the 12th of February, Deputy Minister Whitfield had written to the President requesting permission to travel. 10 days later, he had not received a reply or any response whatsoever about the trip. Whitfield subsequently wrote...
Order, honourable members. May I ask the Chief Whip of the ANC to do the same, please? Otherwise, we are not going to get through the speech. Let's be fair, honourable members, let's be fair. Even if you disagree with what the honourable member is saying, the honourable member, in terms of the rights and the Constitution, have the right to say what he wants to say. Order. Please proceed.
Whitfield subsequently wrote to the President to apologise if he had caused offence. Again, he received no response. Then yesterday, months after the incident, and without a further word on it, the President unilaterally removed a DA Deputy Minister without even giving his largest coalition partner an opportunity to discuss it with the member or his party.
Order, honourable members.
Now, according to the President's spokesperson, this move is not part of a broader reshuffle. And there can therefore be no other conclusion to be drawn that this is a calculated assault on the second largest party in the governing coalition. But
Order, honourable members.
What makes matters worse is that this unilateral action is a result and a product of a flagrant double standard. While a DA deputy minister is removed for not getting a response to seeking permission to travel, there are members in the cabinet who are implicated in the VBS scandal and looting. There are members in the cabinet.
Order, honourable members.
Who, despite apparently misleading Parliament over an attempt to deploy corrupt cadres to CETA boards, remains in the cabinet. Serial underperformers and people implicated in state capture continue to sit around the cabinet table. Now, instead of being summarily fired, like DM Whitfield was, these ministers get an opportunity to submit a report to the President on their behaviour. In the past, even ministers who had serious public protective findings against them were merely admonished or had their pay docked. Yet a DA deputy minister is dismissed with the flimsiest of excuses. Are the people of South Africa expected to accept that fraudsters, corruption accused and Zondo accused are protected while Deputy Minister Andrew Whitfield is removed? But perhaps there's something even deeper at play here. Like all DA ministers and deputy ministers, contrary to what the Honourable Tambo said, Andrew Whitfield was succeeding in his job. He had opposed the attempt to make suspect appointments to the IDC board. He was raising uncomfortable questions about the Transformation Fund and the opportunities it provides for looting. And yes, he was asking the uncomfortable questions about the Lotto Tender Award. Now, given this flagrant double standard, one is left with no choice but to conclude that hard-working DA members of the executive are fired for fighting corruption, not for committing corruption.
SAFM. You're listening to the National Pulse.
Akublanta City Southeast Sama Suleiman kunena kuti sona imene adapereka president pa 14 February ionetsa kuti palibe chilichonse cha zero chimene chidaperekedwa ku sona imeneyi akuti imene ayichotse
zochitika ndi madaphiri lolemba mpaka lachisanu pa nthawi ya 7 koloko kufikira 8 koloko madzulo pa Channel Africa. Africa in Business on Channel Africa.
Good afternoon. This is indeed African Business. My name is Tabiso Lohoko on Channel Africa. Joining in for Tami Ngubeni. Join in the conversation as we steer the ship. On X, it's at Channel Africa numerical 1. Facebook at Channel Africa. On Instagram, you can find us at Channel Africa numerical 1. You can also subscribe on YouTube at Channel Africa 1. You can send us your stories to newsroom at channelafrica.co.za, or alternatively, you can call us on +27 11 714 4459. You can also send us your comments and voice notes. Remember that number, +27 633 406 9126, +27 633 406 9126 in your comments. So please tell us tell us in which country you are in. If you've missed any of our interviews, you can find them on www.channelafrica.co.za. Click on programming, look for African Business, and you can find a podcast of whatever you have missed.
G20 in Africa, exclusive to Channel Africa.
Now it's that time of the week when we cross over to our sister station, SAFM. And yes, indeed, you know the G20 is hot on the heels. As you know, South Africa is holding the G20 presidency this year and will later host the main G20 summit later this year in November. Of course, we are joined on the line by SAFM's Ashraf Gada. Good afternoon, Ashraf. How have you been?
Yeah, I've been very well indeed. Good to bump into you 2 weeks ago, as you're well aware of, because I don't see you running, I see you walking, which is completely different. But perhaps that's what G20 is all about. Can we move from walking to running as a country, as a continent, as a world, isn't it?
Yes, and conquer, and make sure that we get through the marathon.
Absolutely. Now, let's talk about this. As we know, in fact, right now there's the G20 Sherpas meeting currently taking place in the Northwest region, and all of this in South Africa, part of the build-up to the G20 summit proper. Now, South Africa's Minister of International Relations and Cooperation, Ronald Lamola, confirmed, and this is significant, that the United States extended an apology for its non-attendance. This, of course, understands for the Sherpas meeting, right?
He stressed, however, that the G20 deliberations would proceed as planned.
Yeah, and with that in mind, let's move on to some of the significant connections, because while this is happening, as we're well aware of, Israel and Iran agreed to that significant ceasefire. So there are questions emerging around, Africa's economic position in the light of clearly the shifting political landscape, and meaning just how things shift so quickly. So there's more on that, right?
So for more, I guess, Ashraf, we are now joined on the line by the ministry's spokesperson, Crispin Phiri.
Crispin, good to connect with you here on this collaboration, SAFM and Channel Africa, all around G20.
It's a brilliant collaboration, Ashraf, and I'm looking forward to hearing more of this type of collaboration. Channel Africa is quite an important platform for us to also discuss geopolitical issues on the African continent, and we often participate there. And as you were speaking, I heard you reference the conflict in Israel and Iran. One of the things that the minister touched on in his speech was the conflict in Sudan, highlighting that it is a blight on our consciousness, that this conflict is actually not, the spotlight is not shone on this conflict. And the humanitarian crisis we are seeing in Sudan is at a level that is unprecedented. We have 30 million people affected from a migration point of view alone. So it's really, really a severe crisis that the minister highlighted in his G20 speech today, G20 Sherpa speech, to say this is a platform where we should also look at how we can ensure that this conflict does not go on unabated without the world even batting an eyelid towards.
Well, I'm glad that he did highlight that. We'd certainly try and do so here on this show, The National Pulse on SAFM. But the big question, you don't have to answer right now. Yes, if it's a blight on the continent and the world, then why so? Why can't that position be changed? But don't answer that now. That's another whole conversation, Crispin. Let's get on to another issue which is so important to South Africa because of our relationship with the USA right now. So there's ambiguity regarding whether the Americans will be present at the G20 proper, but for now, at the Sherpas meeting, the Americans are not there. Why?
The Americans have been participating in other G20 meetings, and this one is a bit of an exception at various levels, but the other Sherpa meetings were attended at the appropriate level by the Sherpa. But as we understand it, we received an apology for this particular meeting. And we accept that indeed they couldn't make it for this meeting, but they have been participating. So it's really one of those things. And I think, as the minister has said, the agenda continues. Our presidency continues, and the G20 member state countries are here and very well represented. And we continue to champion what we believe the G20 nations should be focused on and should be addressing in a world where multilateralism is under severe decline. The UN is really seeing an unprecedented crisis of international law really being put on the back burner. And this has got geo-economic consequences as well. So that's what our G20 presidency and what the minister was raising today is a matter that we should really be looking into to ensure that as 20 of the world's most influential countries, we ensure that we really have a handle on these very important issues so that we can see more progress in the world instead of stagnation and almost a regression, if you like, even in how we relate as world's countries.
Yep.
Well, let me come in there, Crispin, and ask you, South Africa's vision. What does it envision for the continent in influence in global decision-making through platforms like the G20, especially as the world undergoes such significant geopolitical shifts with many emerging powers on the poles?
Yeah, I think, Tabiso, I can give you an example through one of the things that the minister spoke about today is a critical minerals focus, which the whole world is currently fixated on, because we know that electronic vehicles are partnered or are driven literally by minerals that come from the very northwest that we are sitting in right now. Catalytic converters in cars come from platinum that's literally found in the northwest as we speak now, but not just the northwest, other African countries as well. So Africa as a whole is a repository for critical minerals. And how do we ensure that these minerals do not leave the countries, our African countries, without any value add, unbeneficiated, if you like? We need to ensure that when they leave this country, they leave at a point where value has been added, and we don't have a situation where we are now importing the end product of our very own minerals. And that's a very critical focus of our G20 presidency, and one of the things that we are championing uncritically as a goal for this G20 presidency, to ensure that all of these influential countries that trade with us on critical minerals also commit to ensure that there will be value at source in the countries that these minerals are obtained from. And there's broad consensus on that I can definitely say is emerging from the G20 countries around that.
Well, you know, Crispin, interesting you use the word value add, I think 3 times. It's very important because it gets me thinking about what is the value of South Africa as a country effectively being the president or the presidency of the G20, and then, its ability, therefore, in terms of this value add, to influence key decisions within the G20 and outside it?
That's a good question. I mean, South Africa is already playing a critical role in various multilateral fora. Even on this critical minerals discussion, we had members on the UN panel who determined how we should approach critical minerals from a UN perspective. So it's a very critical platform for us as a G20 country as well, because we then are able to reassert some of the very important values that we believe the international system should be shaped around. International, a rules-based system based on international law, a centering of multilateralism with the UN at its pinnacle. These are very important principles that seem to be waning at a very, very critical time in the world. And that's what South Africa's presidency is contributing. And I think it's of immense value that we really refocus on these values and focus on ensuring that the Sustainable Development Goals, as broadly identified as something that we should all be focusing on, are ultimately implemented so that we can see Africa itself developing, but so that the global south can shed the iniquities of the past.
Well, maybe we need to work out a way to measure that value add you talk about. But Tabiso, to you?
Well, I think I've taken more than enough from what Crispin has answered, and it seems as if partnerships are at the core, at the center, and we're yet to see how these deliberations and decisions will be implemented.
Okay, let's leave it at that. Crispin Phiri, appreciate your time. Thank you so much for joining us. Of course, Crispin is the spokesperson for the Department of International Relations and Cooperation. And there we are. We'll do it again next week. Every day around, every Thursday around this time from 4:15 to the bottom of the hour, we will connect with a key decision maker, a key player within the G20 in the build-up to the G20 summit. This wonderful collaboration and I'm quoting Crispin Peary on this one here, between SAFM Radio and Channel Africa.
Here, there, and everywhere. SAFM 106.1 FM in Bombela.
Okay, there's lots of comments on many things, including the charter, but also about the DA, right? Because that's a moving story.
How's it, Ashraf? There's never a dull moment in South African politics here, really. So, but the DA really thought they would do that trip, that minister will go there, do what he does and say whatever he said, and there'll be no consequences. In all of that, there'll be no consequences. They really thought that they would be able to do that in America and no repercussions at all. Crazy. Ibrahim, Cape Town.
Okay, got that. Well, I hear you. Here's another one on the Freedom Charter.
Good afternoon, Ashraf. It's Mr. Suleiman. Yes, Ashraf, Professor Pitika Ntuli, my working colleague some time back, is absolutely right. Who has this Freedom Charter freed? Fraud and corrupt people, cash and hoist, transit people, robberies, crimes of all sorts, political people who can come in and embezzle and have their own ways. We need to get together and move towards correcting this freedom of charter if it needs be, and it must be a working document for every South African. Thank you. Bye.
But I mean, the Freedom Charter is not the Constitution. It may have shaped our thinking, but there are many aspects of the Freedom Charter, including the issues of land distribution or redistribution, that is actually not been implemented in the Constitution. So I'm not sure why we think that the Freedom Charter is the Constitution, because it is not. Right. Let's see if I can pick up some more comments from you. We'll do that after this.
Get to Dis-Chem for big electrical savings. The more you buy, the more you save. Enjoy incredible discounts on participating brands like Philips, Dequib, Reflections, Russell Hobbs, and many more. Get 25% off when you buy one electrical product, 30% off when you buy two, and a huge 35% off when you buy three. T's and C's apply. Don't miss out. This electrifying offer ends 13 July. Only at Dis-Chem. Better health starts here.
Ashraf Garda on SAFM.
So here's a question from Vuyo that's so interesting. Hi Ashraf, is it fair to say that Bafana, the Boks and the Proteas squad reflect the demographics of the academies, it's the key word, of the academies and schools the players come from, therefore aiming for transformation that reflects demographics of South Africa is far-fetched? Well, I think you're by and large right, but therefore there's nothing stopping us changing the demographics of the academies. I mean, that's where the shortfalls occur, isn't it? And including football too, by the way, right? Here's another comment, but how can you hold Parliament accountable? Okay, let me just hold that one for now. Let me just remind you, by the way, there's more to come. So we're going to have your chances to call in. I wonder what you make of the DA story of the DA deputy. Now, you understand from John Steenhuisen, he's talking about there was no official reason given for the axing of the deputy minister, right? And I'm talking about Andrew Whitfield. But judging from what John Steenhuisen is saying, effectively it was about an overseas trip that he had written to the president to inform him about, and there was no response. And that is central to that. That's what we think, or that's what he thinks. We'll find out exactly how true that may be. In the meantime, the DA, well, they're clearly going to have talks about that, and they are. That's the plan, and we'll see what they say about it. One thing they'll not do, on the basis of everything we've spoken about before, is like, they'll be so upset they'll walk away from the GNU. That's not going to happen. I think we've moved past that a long, long time ago between those two parties anyway. 4:30, here's the news headlines.
Thank you, Ashraf. For the news headlines, International Relations and Cooperation Minister Ronald Lamola has sought to clarify the absence of the U.S. at the third G20 Sherpa meeting currently underway in Sun City in the northwest. The Federal Executive Council chairperson Helen Zille has convened an urgent meeting of the party's FedEx following the sacking of Deputy Minister of Trade, Industry and Competition Andrew Whitfield, and Zambian Minister of Foreign Affairs and International Cooperation Mulambo Haimbe says it's important for the Zambian government and Edgar Lungu's family to find common ground. A full update follows at the top of the hour with Eva Chipa.
SAFM, guiding you through the rush hour traffic.
Good afternoon. Starting off in Gauteng, the M1 southbound queuing towards Boysons. Slow-moving traffic reported in the Crown area, so expect delays. In Midrand, the N1 northbound queuing towards Samrand Road, and the N1 northbound has a crash reported after Allendale Road. In KZN, the N3 westbound in Pietermaritzburg has a stationary vehicle before Market Road, the N3 eastbound queuing towards Key Ridge, and the M7 eastbound slow-moving towards the North Dean exit. In Cape Town, the M5 southbound slow-moving towards Racecourse Road exit. For Trekker Road has heavy traffic reported between Salt River Circle and Maitland, and Main Road outbound in Observatory is slow-moving towards the N2 highway. With your traffic update, I'm Irma G.
Stay safe on the roads. SAFM is with you. This is SAFM Sports with Tuming Kapele.
So I heard the name Shukri coming into your conversation, to me. Go for it.
Yeah, Proteas coach Shukri Conrad has rested some of his regulars for the T20 squad that will play the Tri-Series against Zimbabwe and New Zealand in Harare next month. Conrad cited the upcoming heavy schedule of 04, especially all format players, and stressed the need to give them a break from the game. Following the red and white ball series in Zimbabwe, the Proteas will travel to Australia for a T20 and ODI series before heading to the UK for another white ball assignment against England. They will close out the year with an all-format inbound series against India.
Yeah, look, I think it's the all-format guys that have been rested. If you go back to what their last couple of months have looked like, I mean, they played Test series against. We had Sri Lanka, Pakistan back home. Then they had SA20, then they went straight from there into an IPL, and the IPL went on for a bit longer. Then we had the World Test Championship final, so their last couple of months have been chock-a-block. And then if you cast your eye on what the next few months look like for us, starting with obviously this series, and then we go a couple of days after we go Australia, England, we felt it was the best thing for them to freshen up. And that was the big thing for me, is for them to get a really good break away from cricket, freshen up.
Then in rugby, Piers Skuman will wear the Lions' #1 jersey against the Force in Perth on Saturday. The South African loose head prop, who came off the bench in their 28-24 defeat to Argentina to make his Lions debut, will scrum down alongside Dan Sheehan and Furlong. Now, Sheehan is one of the 5 starters alongside Leinster's teammate Gary Ringrose and James Lowe and Joe McCarthy, who make their Lions debut this weekend at the Optus Stadium. In football, Kaizer Chiefs will face Ghanaian side Asante Kotoko in the Toyota Cup at the Moses Mabhida Stadium in Durban on the 26th of July. The Toyota Cup debuted last season, where Chiefs were beaten by Young Africans of Tanzania at the Toyota Stadium in Bloemfontein. Now, Chiefs have played Asante Kotoko before. It was back in 2001. The two sides contested the final of the Vodacom Challenge. Meanwhile, Marumo Gallants have appointed Lafitte Alexandra as the club's new head coach. The 28-year-old recently coached in France and Cote d'Ivoire, and he is expected to arrive in the country in 2 weeks' time, with the club's pre-season training starting on the 1st of July. In athletics, the coach of South African middle distance runner Ryan Patlele, Elvis Khoza, says that he wasn't surprised by his athletes' automatic qualification for the World Senior Championships in the men's 1500 meter in Germany. Now, Patlele clocked an impressive 3 minutes 32 seconds, comfortably inside the qualifying standard of 3 minutes 33 seconds for the global event in Tokyo, Japan. In the past, the duo had to rely on world ranking points to qualify, but this year they secured their place with 3 months to spare.
No. I'm not surprised, and we were not planning to qualify World ranking. We wanted to qualify automatic. As we said, our first race that will run in Europe, it should be a qualifying or as a record. So one of it became successfully, and then the plan now is to go at least to have another PB as soon as we can before the World Athletics comes to on board.
Finally, in motorsport, Max Verstappen leads Red Bull into their home Austrian Grand Prix this weekend, hoping a major upgrade package can boost their title defense before it's too late. The four-time world champion, who still needs to avoid any on-track problems that could lead to mandatory race ban, has won 4 times at the high-speed Red Bull Ring circuit in the Styrian Alps and will be backed by his orange army of fans, but he knows that combination may not be enough. I'll have more on other sports in the next hour.
Okay, perfect. And lots more to consider. And I think as Sundowns now come back home, on the one hand, now it gets very quickly, it gets back to pre-season and then the season, right?
And I actually saw that they're going to cut down on the number of players that they have ahead of the new season. So we are yet to see how that one will go. But they are returning with a lot of money in the bank.
In fact, the question is like, how much would they have won if they? You did say that what's the appearance fee just for playing in the tournament?
I think the appearance fee,
like $60 million US.
Somewhere there, 74 million.
So what would they have gone if they won the whole tournament?
Probably over $1 billion, because I know that if you go through the round of 16, it's around 133 million rand. Through to the quarterfinals, it's around 232 million rand. It increases. The semifinals, 72 million rand. So probably it would have been like over $1 billion if they went on to the final. I can just imagine
the conversation today between the team's accountants and the bank manager about just reshifting budgets on that basis. Yeah, okay, got that.
SAFM 104 to 107 nationwide.
This week on Off Pitch Goals, having been a defensive rock for the Pefeni Glamour Boys, Kaizer Chiefs, Jomo Cosmos and Supersport United, Morgan Gould goes from threading passes to selling the most stylish threads in urban streetwear. He takes us through the rigors of the fashion industry, tackling design, manufacturing and retail. Streaming on SABC Plus and SABC Sport on DTT Channel 4 on Saturday, 28 June at 8:30 p.m. Off Pitch Goals, where we showcase how the stars score in business. Brought to you by SABC Sport.
For the love of the game. Get your payments done with the utmost security and convenience when you purchase a TV license now. With our new secure payment systems with a one-time PIN OTP feature and the choice of receiving your OTP via SMS or email, you can ensure prompt and secure payments. The additional use of CAPTCHA will protect you against spam and automated data attractions. With TV licenses, you can enjoy watching all your favorite shows or movies that matter to you. Get yours today. Visit www.tvlic.co.za.
This Youth Month, SAFM celebrates the spirit, power and potential of young South Africans. Join us as we dive into conversations that matter, from innovation to education and skills for the changing world, empowering youth for meaningful economic participation. Because at SAFM, we're not just talking, we're leading the conversations that move us.
Economic news on SAFM. Facts and figures you can count on.
Let's get to those facts and figures with Paswane Mpatlele, Senior Accounts Manager at Makwe Fund Managers. Local and global news in a moment, but there's news about Growth Point. Tell me about that.
Afternoon, Ashraf and Jolly listeners. Yes, Growth Point, they gave us their 9-month performance, and they're delivering on an improving earnings, as they indicated that their full-year distribution earnings is expected to increase higher than expected, thanks to the South African portfolio recovering well, rent reversions improving, vacancies improving, and the retail is steady. The logistics is also showing an upliftment because of the increase in space, and the VNA remains a very good asset for them, above market earnings, thanks to tourism developments. Meanwhile, when we look at it, despite these gains, they still face a high vacancy when you look at some of the international portfolios where they've been offsetting their income. And when we bring it into the market in general, we're looking at a market volatility that eased as bets on the near-term interest rates are increasing in the market. We've seen that the U.S. economy has contracted by 0.5% in Q1, and this weakness is weakening on the dollar, and adding the speculation of the fact that there is a new Fed that might come earlier than expected in terms of announcement and is rather more dovish than the current Fed. This has put the dollar on the back foot, supporting the performance of other currencies. The dollar bond yields globally are shifting in the same direction on growth concerns. This development has supported the reinflation of the likes of silver, copper, platinum, oil up 0.5% at $67.25 a barrel. The rand, the gold prices that has seen its realignment with the relationship with the dollar in the short term is going down, according to like the dollar down 0.3 at $3,320 an ounce. We're looking at the global reinflation on the equities. We're seeing the US indices up 0.5 across the board, Europe DAX up 0.4, FTSE up 0.2. The JSE is also pushing higher, up 0.6, reinflating those resources as commodity prices are higher, up 2.3%. Industrials is up 0.5. Financials is down 0.5. The rand has been flirting rather flat, sitting at 17.75 against the dollar, despite GNU stabilities in there coming in question. Meanwhile, our consumer confidence has eased in Q2, while our foreign direct investment in Q1 has increased by 12 billion into the equity markets. We've seen the rand against the euro sits at 20.76 and rand against the pound 24.34.
That's where we can leave it. Paswane, thanks for that. And let me remind you, there's a full 1 hour of Knowing the Markets from 6 to 7 this evening, as it is every weekday evening with Jimmy Moya. Do not miss that, the SFM Markets Update.
Ashraf Garda is streaming live now on Facebook, YouTube, and X at SAFM Radio.
Still to come, we'll have another take on the Freedom Charter, 70 years today, and perhaps you may want to just comment on that just now when I take your calls. That is, to what extent has the Freedom Charter influenced South Africa's constitution, but South Africa's ability as a country to lead and deliver to the masses in terms of service delivery. You may want to comment on that. There's an update as well from the Zambian position regarding this ongoing debate about the burial site of the former leader of Zambia, Edgar Lungu. So we'll talk about that after 5. And let me tell you, if there's any change or any developing story or pronouncement on the fact from the DA side, considering the fact that their deputy cabinet minister in terms of trade has been axed, then we will certainly bring that to you, because this ultimately is the national pulse. But have you heard John Steenhuisen? Are you convinced by what he said about what he called the double standards? I'm paraphrasing from the president in terms of applying accountability and leadership. Think about that. In the meantime, let's talk about MasterCard. Everybody knows MasterCard. I certainly do. They've been operating on the African continent for many, many years, and certainly a huge impact in South Africa and the continent. So let's bring in Gabriel Swanepoel, the country manager for Southern Africa for MasterCard. Gabriel, appreciate you connecting to us on the National Pulse.
Ashraf, good afternoon. Good to speak to you again, and thank you for having me.
Thank you. So, I've already made the point about the imprint that MasterCard has left in South Africa and the African continent. But I understand there's news about a greater commitment, greater support, greater investment on the continent. Tell me about it.
We've been operating in Africa now for 50 years, issuing the first MasterCard in conjunction with Standard Bank some 50 years back. And, if there's anything that the legacy of the last 50 years has taught us, is that the next 50 years presents ourselves with opportunity as well. And to this end, we concluded a study with Genesis Analytics, and in their report, they project Africa's digital payment economy will reach $1.5 trillion by 2030, which I'm sure you can agree is a substantial number in terms of future growth.
So let's then talk about, first of all, the reasons for greater commitment in terms of where you see the alignment between MasterCard and Africa, say Southern Africa, together going forward.
I think it's about value exchange. The South African Reserve Bank has been very explicit in terms of positioning modernization of the broader payment ecosystem, and that's an initiative that we are absolutely aligned to. And so it's about that bottoms-up partnership in understanding what is important to the country, what is important to the stakeholders within the broader financial services market, but then ultimately what is good for the citizenry of the country and what we need to do to think through things like digitization from a financial perspective and how that ultimately benefits all of the different ecosystem players.
So I understand, in terms of the investment into the economy that MasterCard will pump in, and the numbers are 1.5 trillion US dollars in terms of digital payments, right? So not direct investment in terms of how you see the amount of trade taking place, right? That is clearly significant, right? How then do you utilize that level of transactions to be able to create real opportunities for the various communities that make up the continent?
Yeah, you see, I think that it's a function of understanding the macro trends, and some of those macro trends speaks to internet penetration in Africa that is now growing at 20% annually. But importantly, also financial inclusion that is growing at 6%. And the important part around this is to understand how financial inclusion presents an opportunity to drive economic activity. The way we see that is a focus and an emphasis on three particular areas. The one is thinking through how we enable Africa's micro, small, and medium businesses. And I'm sure you can appreciate that, once there's visibility with that environment in terms of the trade that happens not just at domestic level, but also at international level, it opens up opportunities around, credit scoring, which in turn opens up new markets for those businesses and, actually just stimulate the trade activities, not just at a domestic level, but also cross-border. And then secondly is an understanding of how do we think through really igniting the fintech sector across the continent. And once we've thought through, how we can support them with MasterCard assets and services, how do we think about enabling particular use cases that benefit consumers, like scaling remittances and driving cross-border payments?
It's interesting, there's not a day that goes by, and I don't mean just on air, even in off-air coffee conversations with myself and my own chummies, and the issues like, blockchain and cryptocurrency comes up. And it gets me thinking about you in terms of what is your understanding in terms of digital growth? What are the key drivers for you from a MasterCard perspective on the continent?
I think I'll point to three things. I think the first thing that we need to talk through is access. Access is important in order to make available the opportunity to, utilize digital services that allows you to participate within the broader formal economy. Be that access to markets, be it access to technology, be it access to credit. All of those components are important. You've mentioned, crypto. I think the promise of stablecoin on the horizon and, the rise of AI speaks to the need of immediacy and understanding how ultimately we satisfy consumer need and the provision of services and products as and when it is required, leveraging new technologies that can deliver on that need for immediacy. And then thirdly is building out the ecosystem. If we take cognizance of how fast and rapidly the digital world is evolving, how do we ensure that those that don't currently have access to these types of technologies and services get access to them, that we can all go on this journey together?
Well, let's just talk about something that's very practical. Some people listening think we maybe speak at a high level, but then they get the realities of the practical issues, which is cross-border payments, because many people listening now could be from outside of South Africa, for example, right? Let's talk about that. What's the use, or how does MasterCard enable cross-border payments now, and how do you intend to accelerate that?
Yeah, we have, I think firstly is just the scope of it. The challenge to a certain extent is that Africa is a massive continent, right? But it's a youthful continent with more than 1 billion people on it. And the communities in Africa migrate. And as they migrate, the diaspora communities work on other parts of the continent. And as they do that, they have the need to send money home. And so, in 2023, Africa received nearly $100 billion in terms of remittances, which in many cases is the sustenance of these families in the way that, they are able to make their way through life. So for MasterCard, it's important to partner in the right way and set up the infrastructure in order to enable these. And we've signed partners across the continent like MTN Group and Airtel that, allows access to be able to, fund a mobile money wallet and then send the remittance transactions on the continent back to friends and family, to support and your families and drive that value exchange. And I think that over and above that is the work that we're doing with regulators across the continent that make sure that we adhere to the regulatory controls, but ultimately making the service available in a very easy to use way and in a safe and a secure way at an affordable cost for the broader consumers out there.
Well, we all know what the big payoff lines of Masterclass is. I'll leave it to people to imagine what that really means. Gabriel Swanepoel, thanks for your time. Much appreciated. Country manager for Mastercard Southern Africa. And there we are, big investment and continued growth in Southern Africa and the African continent for Mastercard. This is the National Pulse.
SAFM.
It's a massive night of boxing this Friday in Thohoyandou at the Koroni Hotel and Casino. Current WBF Intercontinental Champion Akani Sambu from Malamulele trades punches with KZN's tough challenger Sabelo Tebekulu, while Mzansi's reigning queen Nosiakazu Dube defends a throne against Loveness Koka from Malawi. Limpopo's Kumulani Stonefist Nechamuchenzi clashes with the rebel Musitihwe from Botswana. Plus many more bouts. Who will survive? This is the Survival of the Fittest International Boxing Tournament. Catch the action this Friday, 27 June at 6 p.m. Streaming live on SABC Plus and SABC Sport on DTT Channel 4. Then on SABC 2 at 10:30 p.m. Proudly brought to you by Mama Rocks Boxing Promotions and SABC Sport.
The National Arts Festival is back. South Africa's biggest celebration of the arts is on. From the 26th of June to the 6th of July, Makhanda becomes the stage for South Africa's boldest theatre, dance, music, arts, comedy, and more. Experience the creative energy, markets, exhibitions, and many surprises. It's where the country comes to create and the world takes notice. Browse the program and book now at nationalartsfestival.co.za. Own it, celebrate it, be there.
The Morning Brief.
Why, in your view, do we continue to see incidents of alleged and actual racism in schools?
I think most children, if we're talking about the racism from children, and let's remember it's not only from the children or the learners, reflects what they are hearing at home. Children don't just do what their parents say. So if their parents say, don't do this, don't use those words, don't say that. But if they actually hear their parents and see their parents behaving in a racist way, then that's the way that they are going to behave themselves.
That's Teresa Oakley-Smith, who is founder and CEO of the transformation and consultancy firm Diversity.
Tulasizwe Simelane on The Morning Brief. Find the podcast at safm.co.za.
Let's have the conversation. WhatsApp voice notes on 0614 104 107.
Right, let's hear from you. And there's some voice notes I'll pick up in a moment. But first, there's a call from Musina, from JCK. Go for it, JCK.
Hi, Ashraf, are you well?
Yeah, I'm pretty well indeed, right. What's your point?
Good. Ashraf, 70 years of Freedom Charter.
Mm-hmm.
You know, Freedom Charter is just a good document, but in practice, we are failing because we want to realize that because of our lack of political will and greediness. That's why we are failing. This thing of saying apartheid about 300 years is just a petty excuse. The politicians should have done something for 30 years to better the life of the people. Look today, South Africa is the most unequal society because of greed of our politicians. Let me rest my case for now.
Okay, you rest your case. Well, I mean, see, that's the point. How much of it is the fault of the Freedom Charter or the fault of the implementers of the Freedom Charter and of the Constitution too, isn't it? That really is the issue. So that issue of the fired deputy minister clearly is going to get the pulses racing.
Afternoon, Ashraf. Yeah, it's the first time the president fire a minister without shifting him or her. It's the first time the president firing a minister. That means he has had enough with this man. And the GA, remember they tabled a motion of no confidence against the mayor of Joburg. Now, that can't just go away. It's a wound. You see? They need to behave very well, the DA. They need to behave very well. They work together with the ANC, but they need to behave very well. I think Jan Kruger's.
Okay, got that. About the fired deputy. In fact, what we'll be doing, we'll be chatting to the DA national spokesperson, and that's Willie Okamp coming up around 5:10. So listen out for that. Here's another on the charter.
Good afternoon, Ashraf and your team, including the SFM listeners. With regards to the Freedom Charter and its celebration today, I feel like as South Africans, we shouldn't be too negative, to criticize our Freedom Charter due to our current difficulties, that we're facing in the country. We should look past that because as a nation, South Africa does represent the US of Africa, and I say that proudly. That's the reason why there's so many foreigners. They're trying to look for hope, for a better life. Daniel here in Bryanston. That's just my opinion.
Okay, got that. Talking about hope. By the way, we'll be chatting tomorrow. I had this fireside chat where we have a person for an hour. Dr. Matthew Sposla is my guest. Does he give you hope? Either way, listen to him tomorrow, 5 to 6 p.m., right? Here's another comment on the Charter.
Hi, Ashraf. South Africa is for the people who are hypocrites, more especially the leaders in the government of ANC and even in this government of a GNU. Because political leaders, they think they are most high people who are VIP here in South Africa. They took money for their trips to overseas and spend with their family. They don't care about the poor. They steal from the government. They don't care about the poor. So that Freedom Charter is not relevant with the life of today here in South Africa. So my name is Les.
Thanks for that, Les. Again, but you see, does that reflect on the Freedom Charter, which says completely opposite to some of the practices of politicians, or is it the politicians we're talking about here who are unable to implement? Limpopo is where we go to next. Ludwig on the line. Hello.
Hi, Ashraf. How are you, sir?
Yeah, good indeed. Right. What's your point?
All right. On the issue of Freedom Charter, one, we just need to be clear about one thing here. Freedom Charter is not celebrated by South Africa. Freedom Charter is ANC's document. So it's ANC that is celebrating the Freedom Charter. And now I so wish that you can call someone from ANC to tell us exactly what is it that they are celebrating. Because there's nothing that was achieved out of that document. And it doesn't even form part of our constitution. So now when we look at the history as South Africans, we know the struggle, we know the history of this country. This is the same document that made the likes of Professor Robert Mangaliso Sobukwe to part away from ANC because there is no way that this land can belong to all who live in it. This land belongs to Africans. From Cape to Cairo, this is Africa. Africa means us, the indigenous people. So now let ANC celebrate the Freedom Charter, but let them not involve everyone else as if like we all celebrating this document.
Okay, you made your point very clearly in terms of the point of departure. I wonder, are you right? That's what Ludwig says in Limpopo. Quick call to Lazarus. Lazarus in Kokwa. Go for it, Lazarus.
Good afternoon, Ashraf. How are you doing?
I'm very good indeed. Right, your thoughts?
Yeah, my thoughts is on the late president of Zambia. Yeah. Edgar Lungu.
Mm-hmm.
Man, I was watching the TV during the day with Osis Mukwena when they were having a discussion with the minister at the side of international relations. What is disheartening me, Ashraf, is that one day I was watching TV, I saw the former president when they were blocking him after I think there was a court issue, and then he wanted to walk. They could not even allow him to walk Now, the man, I think, he left his country being someone who was not loved by his own country. That's why he ran this side. Now the country is trying to show him love when the man is no longer there.
But
So I
it's,
think
it's the
of-
government more than, it's a
Yes,
government
yes, yes.
decision.
I'm actually talking about the government because they were using the instruments like the police or the soldiers to block it. Even right now, Ashraf, I can't even block you to work. Let's say you're no longer working for SABC.
Okay.
And now I block you from working from around SABC. I mean, really, that
All right.
for me.
Thank you
it
for
didn't make
that.
sense.
I'm going to leave
All
it
right.
that because we're getting on to news time, Lazarus, but I will tell you something. We'll be chatting to the representative from Zambia to give their perspective on that issue around 5:20. Do not miss that. We've also been trying to get all the ANC to talk about the Freedom Charter, unable to commit to a time from their point of view, but maybe, just maybe we will. Let's get the news. It's just gone 5 o'clock.
Thank you, Ashraf. An ultimatum over Deputy Minister's firing in Zambian government, speaks on Lungu funeral. Good day to you. The DA has issued a 48-hour ultimatum to President Cyril Ramaphosa over what they call an unjust firing of the Deputy Minister of Trade, Industry and Competition, Andrew Whitfield. It emerged during a post-cabinet briefing that he'd been removed with no plans for a cabinet reshuffle. The DA leader, John Steenhuisen, has called on the president to remove corrupt ANC ministers within 48 hours or run the risk of adverse results from the firing of Whitfield.
This is a calculated assault on the second largest party in the governing coalition. What makes matters worse is that this unilateral action is a result and a product of a flagrant double standard. While a DA deputy minister is removed for not getting a response to seeking permission to travel, there are members in the cabinet who are implicated in the VBS scandal and looting. There are members in the cabinet who, despite apparently misleading Parliament over an attempt to deploy corrupt cadres to CETA boards, remains in the cabinet.
The International Relations and Cooperation Minister Ronald Lamola has sought to clarify the absence of the US at the G20 Sherpa meeting at Sun City in the northwest. He says the US sent a letter of apology stating they wouldn't be attending the meeting due to other commitments.
The US indeed have sent us their apology that the Sherpa is attending the NATO summit. We take that as an apology. We are not concerned. We think that the G20 should be able to function with all the member states who are here of the G20, and they have provided us an apology. So we take it at face value, and we think that we'll be able to come out with very progressive and ambitious resolutions out of this meeting.
Northern Cape police say investigations into a case of negligence following a pit bull attack that left a 10-year-old Kimberley girl without an eye and a fractured skull are at an advanced stage. She was mauled by the dog when a neighbour requested her to assist her in the garden. The grade 4 learner continues to receive medical treatment. Police spokesperson Sergio Cook.
The incident happened on the 2nd of April 2025 at approximately 6 p.m. when a 10-year-old girl was reportedly bitten by a pit bull in a yard in Putani Street, Galashwe. Investigation is at an advanced stage and the docket will be presented to the Senior State Prosecutor for a decision.
The Department of Infrastructure in the Western Cape has urged road users to stay clear of flooded roads and use other routes amid the bad weather conditions. Provincial Minister Tertius Simmers.
The Plaat Road in Bonneville is temporarily closed to traffic. The N2 inbound at the ramp to Broadgate Quarry is closed due to flooding. On the N2 outbound at Robert Sobukwe, the right lane is closed due to the ponding. The drift over the Brede River on Merwers Street is closed to traffic, but alternative routes are available. Simon Road is also closed at the low water structure. The department will continue monitoring the roads and they will issue precautionary lane closures or reopenings if necessary.
The Zambian Minister of Foreign Affairs and International Cooperation, Mulamba Haimba, says it's important for the Zambian government and Edgar Lungu's family to find common ground. This after the High Court in Pretoria halted the burial of the former president yesterday. Haimba further explained the government's decision to take Lungu's family to court.
Sometimes it is necessary to go to a third party, an arbiter that can then determine where the balance of convenience should lie. And this is really what informed the decision. We have to also understand that government cannot be seen as a unitary entity. Rather, it must be looked at from the perspective that it is carrying the will and interests of 20 million Zambians on its back.
The top story: the DA has issued a 48-hour ultimatum to President Ramaphosa over what they call the unjust firing of the Deputy Minister of Trade, Industry and Competition, Andrew Whitfield. That's SAFM News. I'm Greg Goos.
Here, there, and everywhere. SAFM 105.1 FM in Johannesburg. SAFM, guiding you through the rush hour traffic.
Good afternoon. Starting off in Gauteng, the N12 westbound in Eldorado Park, slow moving towards Klipspruit Valley Road. The R21 northbound in Kempton Park has a stationary vehicle before the R23 Benoni exit. And Witkoppen Road in Sunninghill has a crash reported at Rivonia Road. In KZN, the N2 northbound, a stationary truck before the Mtloti exit. The N3 eastbound queuing towards Key Ridge. And the R102 northbound is where a pedestrian crash is reported after the Phoenix Highway exit. In Cape Town, the N2 outbound slow moving towards Bunker Avenue. The N2 inbound has flooding reported on Borchit's Quarry Road off-ramp. The ramp's been closed. And Stellenbosch Atiel Road in Delft, slow moving at Symphony Way. With your traffic update, I'm Irma G.
If we have rights, shouldn't we also have opinions? SAFM, leading the conversations that move us.
This week on Off-Pitch Goals, having been a defensive rock for the Perfeni Glamour Boys, Kaizer Chiefs, Jomo Cosmos and Supersport United, Morgan Gould goes from threading passes to selling the most stylish threads in urban streetwear. He takes us through the rigors of the fashion industry, tackling design, manufacturing and retail. Streaming on SABC Plus and SABC Sport on DTT Channel 4 on Saturday, 28 June at 8:30 p.m. Off-Pitch Goals, where we showcase how the stars score in business. Brought to you by SABC Sport.
SAFM has signed a code of conduct that is enforced by the Broadcasting Complaints Commission of South Africa. Under the code, we are committed to giving news that is accurate, comment that is fair, and programming that is not harmful, does not amount to hate speech, or contain violence or explicit sex. If you think we are not living up to that code, then you can inform the Broadcasting Complaints Commission of South Africa. Direct any complaints in writing to the Broadcasting Complaints Commission of South Africa. PO Box 142365. Craig Hall 2024. Fax to 011-326-3198 or an email to bccsa@nabsa.co.za. For more information, please visit www.bccsa.co.za. Here, there, and everywhere. SAFM 104.6 FM in Kimberley.
The National Pulse with Ashraf Garda on SAFM. You're listening to the National Pulse, weekdays 3 to 6 p.m.
Right, things change by the minute in the country, and therefore things changes by the minute on the show. As you would expect, if we call ourselves National Pulse, we must then reflect the changing of the pulse and the shifting that takes place every single moment, right? So we did chat about the DA, and you heard about the news that the Deputy Minister of Trade and Industry, who is a DA Deputy Minister, Andrew Whitfield, was effectively fired today, and confirmation from the Office of the Presidency that it was not part of a cabinet reshuffle. So don't expect any other cabinet reshuffle. It's singular. It's with one person. Naturally, the DA is not very, very happy. John Steenhuisen, we played some clips from him earlier on in Parliament. In fact, very, very upset and also calling him to question the way the president of our country and maybe by extension other parts of government are selective in how they mete out some forms of punishment. Now, all of this, while there's been no official reason why, there's been speculation certainly from John Steenhuisen's point of view in terms of the why he's been axed or not. But let's take this story further? Because we now have, at a time that everybody's speculating as to what may happen next, we now have the DA's national spokesperson, Billy Okamp, with me. Billy, appreciate your time here on the National Pulse.
Good afternoon, Ashraf. Always nice to speak with you.
Thank you. Right. Let's get some facts out of the way. So, one, I mean, we know that your deputy minister has been axed. That we know for a fact now, right? Yeah?
That's correct.
Okay, that's one. Number two, has there been a reason given? Because early on today, there was no reason given by the president or the presidency.
Ashraf, as we understand it, it is because Deputy Minister Whitfield visited the United States earlier this year without having the proper prior admission or confirmation that he can do so from the president. He did, however, apply to the president, and he notified the president of the dates, but the president in 10 days did not respond to Deputy Minister Whitfield. So he is being fired because he visited another country. Whilst the president has got people within his own cabinet that has been implicated in the Zondo Commission report.
Okay, but wait, we're mixing up the two. We'll get to other things just now.
Sure.
So you're saying, I mean, there's been no official reason from the president or the presidency, because we haven't seen that, right? But you know or you think you know that it's linked to that issue.
I can confirm that is the reason.
Okay.
I can confirm that.
And if that being the reason, what did the president or the presidency actually say? You know, in terms of where has he fallen foul?
Well, they say that he visited another country without having permission from the president to do so.
Okay.
When our leader, John Steenhuisen, came to know of this a day ago, he asked the president to give him 24 hours to discuss this with Deputy Minister Whitfield, and Deputy Minister Whitfield also wrote a letter to the president where he apologized and explained the situation. So the reason for him being fired or being axed is the fact that he visited another country where without the permission of the president.
Now, I understand that Helen Zille has been quoted extensively as saying that the DA is calling an emergency meeting. So is it an emergency meeting of the FedEx or an urgent meeting? Which one is it?
The DA's FedEx has already met this afternoon. We met, we discussed this matter, and then our leader, John Steenhuisen, addressed Parliament in the DORA debate, which we coincidentally supported. But our leader made it very clear what the DA's position is, and he gave an ultimatum to the president.
Okay, so what then is the ultimatum?
The ultimatum is that the president must swipe in front of his own door, because there's a lot of dirt in front of his own door. In the ANC, we've got ministers there that has been implicated in the Zondo Commission report, ministers that are implicated in fraud and corruption charges. So the DA's demand or ultimatum is that the president must fire the people in his own cabinet that face charges like this. People with the like of Simelane and Ntshavheni, ministers that are really disgrace for this parliament. They should not be there.
Okay, so interesting. I mean, you're saying that he's given an ultimatum. So the ultimatum really calls into question, if I understand you correctly, calls into question maybe the duplicitous nature of how the president and maybe others on his behalf carries on their work as an executive. And I get what you're saying there, which is another conversation completely. But interestingly enough, is there no ultimatum to say that our leader, our DA leader, in inverted commas, must be reinstated or else? There's nothing like that.
No, we are not demanding that. If the president wants to do that, that is fine. The president must remember, and I think it is high time really that he realizes that he doesn't govern alone anymore. His party does not have a majority, and he should take into consideration the views of his parties that co-govern with him, and not only just hire and fire as he pleases without proper consultation with the people. Again, what a silly reason to fire a deputy minister who is actually doing his work whilst you are keeping people like Mashatile, for example, Nkabinde, Simelane and Ntshavheni in your cabinet. It should not be. So the Democratic Alliance's ultimatum is very clear. If the president is not going to sweep in front of his own door, our FedEx will reconvene after the 48 hours have lapsed, and we will reconsider our position within the Government of National Unity. Let there be no doubt about that.
All right, so that's the point that really truly matters. Are you saying, and I understand, I mean, this is ahead of the next meeting, that this is so fundamental that if the president doesn't adhere to your request, that this fundamental issue may threaten your relationship with the ANC and other members of the GNU. It is that make or break.
As I just said, the FedEx will reconvene and consider the options on the table and obviously relook at our position within the Government of National Unity. I do not want to preempt what our FedEx will decide, but our FedEx has deemed this so important that was the decision that was conveyed this afternoon by John Steenhuisen in Parliament.
Okay, but having said that, I mean, the fact that you've given him an ultimatum now, if we know how the country works with issues like this and grey areas about good management of leaders and poor management, it's very unlikely. I mean, when you give an ultimatum, you also ask whether it's possible. It's very unlikely that the president is going to adhere to your request regarding all the names you've mentioned before. So what then?
Well, that is the point. He's got time now. We gave him 48 hours. He's got to reconsider the fact that he is not doing a total reshuffle. He's got to look at the people within his cabinet from his own party that are implicated for very grave allegations, and he's got to fire them. If he's not going to do that, I think it will really be putting a cloud over his judgment. Why fire a deputy minister who visited another country? He did not steal anything. He did not go on government's money. He went on the DA's money there. He did not cost the taxpayer 1 cent. Whilst we've got ministers in this Government of National Unity from the ANC that are implicated in the Zondo Commission report and are implicated for very grave allegations. So that is, and if he doesn't want to adhere to that in 48 hours, this is how urgent it is, then our FedEx will reconvene and we will consider our options. So the president has now got to come to terms with the fact that he's not governing alone anymore. And I think this will be a very hard message to him.
Yeah. What is, in terms of the FedEx, I mean, give me, I don't mean a sentence, give me one word that encapsulates the feelings of the DA regarding what has just happened.
Well, one word is very difficult to encapsulate a lot of emotions with regard to our dissatisfaction with what the president is doing. The DA's one word remains, well, it's two words, good governance. And I think it is time that the president now applies that from within his own ranks as well. We've got a lot of ministers there that are not applying good governance. When you look at the work that the DA ministers and deputy ministers have done, you can clearly see that there was good governance. So we expect from all ministers to be above board, to be people with integrity, and to be people that really can implement good governance. And that is what we expect from the president.
Interesting. I mean, it's 1 year of the GNU. As you know, last year, this time, there was so much horse trading taking place, right? It's a good time to ask you then, I mean, you can answer this in one go, right? What then are your reflections of the success or lack thereof of the GNU? And as I ask that question, can we include the point that are you suggesting that the president is overseeing a series of bad governance decisions and bad governance management from key leaders within people that he has appointed?
Ashraf, the first year of the GNU wasn't an easy one. Especially if you look back at the time periods from February this year when we had the budget issues. And the Democratic Alliance showed that our presence within this GNU does make a difference, not only through the work that our ministers and deputy ministers are doing, but through the work that our chairpersons in Parliament is doing, through the pressure that we put on government not to go through with a 2% VAT hike, which would have cost the taxpayer and the poorest of the poor a lot of money. So it went through a difficult patch, but it was clear that if you look at, let's take, for example, Dr. Leon Schreiber and what he has done in Home Affairs, Minister Sibuwe Gwagube and what she has done in education, it was clear that we are moving in the right direction. And that is why it would be a pity if the president now put all of that in jeopardy, because he is actually trying to fight a fight within his own party. The president said in 2018, if I'm not mistaken, that he'll rather be a poor president but have a united ANC. Now, I can tell you now, Ashraf, that he succeeded in 50% of that. He did become a poor president, but he still does not have a united ANC. We need the president to show that he is a leader that can stand up for what is right. And this is now one of those instances. Stand up, Mr. President. Fire those people from in your own party that are implicated and that are not fit to be ministers of this beautiful country of ours.
Okay, let's wrap up. We conclude. If he's such a poor president as you mentioned, Why are you part of a GNU where he leads it?
I'm not saying that. I'm using his own words. He said that he will rather be a poor president but have a united ANC. So he must be very careful that he's not fulfilling his wishes with 50% of what he said. So the president has been elected to be all of our presidents, and he must really step up to the plate and act in the best interest of this country. And to fire a minister or deputy minister in his cabinet for visiting another country without the president's permission, but having people remain in your cabinet that are implicated in far more greater or graver allegations. It is just not on, and it is time for the president to step up to the plate and show that he can rule and make decisions without every single time taking the different ranks of his own party and the division in his own party into consideration when he makes decisions.
Okay, your 48 hours starts now. I expect it to be a very busy weekend from Saturday afternoon to maybe all day Sunday. Much appreciate your time, Willie Okamp, the DA's national spokesperson. Of course, us as the National Pulse, we'll certainly be there having our fingers on the pulse, as I'm sure you, the audience, will do the same. On the pulse, as always.
This week on FC Meets, former Moroka Swallows and Baroka dribbling wizard Sipho Moeti, affectionately known as Gobe, shares his rise from being worshipped at festive games to his inevitable rise to the Betway Premiership. He shares his story of disappointment, triumph and controversy. FC Meets, football made for community by community. Game. Tune into SABC Sport on DTT Channel 4, the Saturday at 6 p.m. Proudly brought to you by SABC Sport.
A new client, a bulk discount, a chance to expand. Business opportunities don't wait, but with the Standard Bank Business Revolving Loan, neither do you. Get up to 10 million Rand in funding, access it anytime, and borrow again as you repay, giving your business the cash flow it needs when it needs it. Keep your business growing with a Standard Bank Business Revolving Loan. Visit standardbank.co.za/business loans to apply. Standard Bank is an authorized FSP and registered credit provider. T's and C's apply.
The citizens and the believers are in a high-level clash of emotions. Drama meets tension. The fight for 3 points is real. This is the PSL Promotional Playoffs. Catch the thrilling encounter between Cape Town City and Cashrick Stars this Monday, 30 June at 2:30 p.m. Streaming live on SABC Plus and SABC2. Proudly brought to you by SABC Sport.
For the love of the game.
Hi, I'm Zycard. Catch me every Saturday from 7 to 9 p.m. on Spotlight as we bring you blow-by-blow sporting action, news. That's Spotlight every Saturday. You don't want to miss it.
Ashraf Garda on SAFM.
Right, the other big issue for the last few days, in fact, has been the issue of Edgar Lungu. Now, yesterday we had a situation where the government of Zambia went to court to interdict the family of the former president, that's Edgar Lungu, from burying him, Edgar Lungu that is, in South Africa, right? And the Gauteng High Court then prevented Lungu from being buried in South Africa. That could go on for a good few weeks, we understand. So let's get a perspective, certainly from Zambia. Mark Simue is the media director of the United Party for National Development, which is the party that is that of the presidency, right? Mark, appreciate your time. Thanks for joining us on the National Pulse.
Thank you very much, and a good evening to all the South Africans there.
Thank you. So let's start by you giving us your perspective, because there's been so much conversations we've had on the show from people being, disgruntled, disappointed, irritated, not quite getting what is the big issue around where a person from another country, who, yes, he was the leader of that country, is being buried when his family feels this is where he should be. Help us understand it.
Thank you very much. To start with, I want to, first of all, appreciate the platform. Need to contextualize matters that in Zambia, we have what we call the Presidential Burial Site Act. That Presidential Burial Site Act is subsidiary legislation that prescribes where presidents are supposed to be buried. That is the starting point.
Mm-hmm.
Secondly, the head of state in Zambia is not an ordinary person or a private person. There is case law to that effect. The case of Kaweche versus Kaunda and others. This is a case in which the Zambian court ruled that the president is not a private person. It is a matter in which the former president, Edgar Lungu, then went to court with his government when the Kenneth Kaunda First family said that they needed to bury Kenneth Kaunda at his farm, at his village. So the court in that case ruled that the president is not a private person, and ruled that in public interest, the president must be given a dignified send-off. That is the basis for this particular approach that government are taking.
Okay.
You may wish to agree with me that, yeah.
Okay, carry on. I hear you.
Yes, so you may wish to understand that there is no country in the world that would want to bury a former head of state abroad. Even when the family has interjected, I've given you the case law to it. Who went to court? President Edgar Lungu himself, who is now late. And now in Zambia, case law is one of the sources of law. And the judgment under case law is binding. And what we are saying is that, aside case law, we have the President Burial Site Act, which prescribes a place we call the Embassy Park, where we've buried all the former head of state. So in our view, President ECL or Edgar Lungu is not an exception. The challenge that we have been confronted with now is that the whole issue has become political. Political vouchers, through rhetoric, have taken over the funeral, and they are projecting a picture having hoodwinked the family for various reasons.
Who are these political vouchers that you refer to?
You have the opposition there, who include among them a former MP, Makebi Zulu, is representing the family there. You have the opposition, a few opposition leaders that may have arrived and have been issuing a lot of running commentaries. And the trajectory now, because in 2026, according to them, if another leader is elected, which obviously, given the political environment, is not tenable. And then one of the things that they are trying to advance is that ECL was persecuted. You may wish to know that, contrary to such kind of assertions, ECL is the only former head of state who has died with his immunity. All the previous former heads of state had their immunity lifted up by parliament. Kenneth Kaunda, you may recall, you can search on Google, he was locked up. They lifted his immunity. They had him locked up under Frederick Chiluba. And it had to take the USA to intervene.
All right.
Rupia Banda, another president.
All right. I think your point is well made. We're going to wrap up in a minute or so. So here's the thing, right? I hear what you're saying about the case law and the President's Burial Site Act. I hear all of that. Now, how do you then measure that against the wishes of the family, his family?
The measure is by law again, the same case law. Remember that the court had to override family interest in that case. The situation was similar. So, outside the case law, on a matter that has been decided in Zambia, where else can you seek remedy?
All right.
So it is only in the course of law. Yeah.
All so to wrap up now, we know there's been, there was an attempt to interdict the family from going ahead with the burial. The Gauteng High Court in South Africa effectively prevented the burial for now, right? A, what's going to happen next? And B, outside the law, is there any attempt to negotiate, let's call it a settlement agreement between Zambia, the country, the government, and the people and the family of the former president?
Absolutely. The president has been open to negotiations, and he has been very clear. He's calling for unity of purpose. He's calling for peace and a more civil way of engaging each other. You need to also understand that for the government to have decided this way, efforts to engage the family failed because even access to people that needed to engage from the family was denied. Even the president himself and the government, access to the body to establish whether President Isia was really dead or not was denied. So the president is open to negotiations. It is not too late. If they can come more sincerely for this sincere conversation, government is not averse to a sincere conversation.
Okay, just on that,
to engage with the family.
Right. On that, I understand that the family are upset about many things, in particular what they call a mistreatment by the current administration against their family member, the former leader, particularly when he had to travel to South Africa to seek medical help. He had to use Uber transport, which is very much public transport, from the airport to his destination. I mean, just a quick answer on that one. I mean, can you understand their frustrations?
No, that's pure political rhetoric. This is what I'm trying to tell you. That never existed. I'm sure you are aware that using artificial intelligence or AI, they even manufactured a letter that seemed to suggest that he was stopped from flying out of the country. He wasn't. In the first place, I should make it very clear that this is a man who was going around the country as and when he wished to. But of course, there are certain laws that bind certain individuals based on their status in the country. I should also make it very clear that the former head of state needed simply to notify the country, and that's how he arrived in South Africa. If he was barred from arriving in South Africa, how did he get there? It was because he notified the government. I should also further mention that during the same time, because the law requires that when a former head of state falls sick or a former minister, they are entitled to foreign treatment. All those things were made available, but the family turned them down. You may wish to also appreciate the fact that within the family, there are some members that are appearing before the court for being in possession of properties suspected to be proceeds of crime. Okay. Regardless of the status in society in Zambia, all of us are not above the law. Right. And the very fact that you come from the first family or former first family does not extinguish liability where the law suspects that certain properties may have been acquired fraudulently.
Mark, I'm going to have to leave it at that.
Not amount to...
Yeah. Mark, we're going to leave it at that. Thank you very much for your time. I mean, I think what we need to do next is get the family's perspective, and maybe we'll do that sometime tomorrow. Mark Simue, the media director for the United Party for National Development, and that, of course, is the party that is linked to the current leader of Zambia. Right, what do you think of that? Let's get Greg Hosier with the news headlines.
Quick look at the headlines. The DA has issued a 48-hour ultimatum to the president over what they call an unjust firing of the Deputy Minister of Trade, Industry and Competition. The ANC says the party will defend itself in court against former President Jacob Zuma, and health officials in the Central African Republic say at least 29 students have died in a stampede at a school in the country's capital. There's a full update at 6 o'clock.
SAFM, guiding you through the rush hour traffic.
Good afternoon. Starting off in Gauteng, the N3 southbound in Germiston, queuing towards Geldenhuys interchange. The N12 westbound in Eldorado Park is slow moving towards Klipspruit Valley Road, and the N1 southbound in Fourways, queuing towards Winnie Mandela Drive. In KZN, the N3 eastbound queuing towards Spaghetti Junction. The N3 eastbound in Pinetown has a crash before the M7 highway, and the R102 northbound has a pedestrian crash reported after the Phoenix Highway exit. In Cape Town, the N7 northbound in Dunoon is where a crash is reported before the Malibongwe Drive exit. The R300 westbound queuing towards the M7 Jakes Hadville Drive junction, and Strandfontein Road southbound in Pelican Park queuing towards Spine Road. With your traffic update, I'm Irma G.
Stay safe on the roads. SAFM is with you. This is SAFM Sports with Tumi Nkgapele.
So yesterday's story was Mamelodi Sundowns. Today's story is Kaizer Chiefs.
It is, because Kaizer Chiefs will face Ghanaian giants Asante Kotoko in the Toyota Cup. This is at the Moses Mabhida Stadium in Durban on the 26th of July. The Toyota Cup debuted last season, where Chiefs were beaten by Young Africans of Tanzania at the Toyota Stadium in Bloemfontein. Now, Chiefs have played Asante Kotoko before, back in 2001, and the two sides contested the final of the Vodacom Challenge.
team that we as Kaiser Chiefs have had a relationship with. We've played them in the Vodacom Challenge many years ago. We've even had some players from the Ghanaian outfit play here in the Kaiser Chiefs jersey. So I'd like to welcome our visitors from Asante Kotoko and say we're excited to be playing with the team and to also be building our diplomatic relations further as South Africa with the Ghanaian nation. And
Meanwhile, Marumo Gallants have appointed Lafitte Alexandra as the club's new head coach. The 28-year-old recently coached in France and Côte d'Ivoire and is expected to arrive in the country in 2 weeks' time, with the club's pre-season training starting on the 1st of July. In cricket, Proteas coach Shukri Conrad has rested some of his regulars for the T20 squad that will play that tri-series against Zimbabwe and New Zealand in Harare next month. Conrad cited the upcoming heavy schedule for especially all-format players, and stressed the need to give them a break from the game.
Yeah, look, I think it's the all-format guys that have been rested. If you go back to what their last couple of months have looked like, I mean, they played Test series against. I mean, we had Sri Lanka, Pakistan back home. Then they had SA20. Then they went straight from there into an IPL, and the IPL went on for a bit longer. Then we had the World Test Championship final. So their last couple of months have been chock-a-block. And then if you cast your eye on what the next few months look like for us, starting with obviously this series, and then we go a couple of days after we go Australia, England, we felt it was the best thing for them to freshen up. And that was the big thing for me, is for them to get a really good break away from cricket, freshen up.
In rugby, the Springbok women are gearing up for a massive test next Saturday as they face world number 2 Canada at Loftus Versfeld in Pretoria. A 26-player squad assembles in Johannesburg this weekend, with coach Swes de Bruin naming season skipper Nolu Boy among the 16 forwards. The second clash takes place in Gqeberha on the 12th of July, both serving as curtain raisers to the Springboks matches against Italy. And the match 23 for the Pretoria test will be confirmed next Thursday as preparations intensify for the Rugby World Cup. Then in motorsport, Max Verstappen leads Red Bull into their home Austrian Grand Prix this weekend, hoping that a major upgrade package can boost their title defense before it is too late. The 4-time world champion, who still needs to avoid any on-track problems that could lead to a mandatory race ban, has won 4 times at the high-speed Racing Bull Ring circuit and will be backed by his orange army of fans. But he definitely knows that combination might not just be enough. Meanwhile, in athletics, the organizers of the Absa Run Your City 10-kilometer still water sports have offered 100,000 rands prize to Stephen Mokoka if he breaks the long-standing 10-kilometer Masters record at the upcoming Durban race on the 13th of July. The 40-year-old is aiming to surpass Kenyan Bernard Lagat's record of 27 minutes and 48 seconds set in Manchester in 2015.
No, for me, just if it's for one, I just set a goal target for myself, so it has nothing to do with whatever incentives that is there or what. I'm going to go out there and compete, as I said before, for an individual purpose and try to see if I can be able to reach the mark. So I don't necessarily need a certain motivation. I've already motivated myself by setting the target for myself. So all I need is just to be healthy and be ready on the day.
Well, I'll be back between 7 and 8 p.m. on Top Sport. For those of you that are not going to be able to watch the Springboks live, there's a thing called Boktown. And this weekend is actually at Wanderers Stadium for all the Springbok fans. We're going to find out a bit more what that Boktown is all about.
Okay. You're not speaking to the Sundowns accountant, are you?
I am also going to touch on Sundowns also.
I mean the accountants, like how much money they slip through their fingers.
No, absolutely not. With that said,
Are we ready for a real conversation? SAFM, leading the conversations that move us.
Are you looking for the best savings on spectacles?
At Specsavers, enjoy 1,500 Rand off when you get tested at South Africa's trusted and most established optical group. Get 1,500 Rand off all frames in store, or use your 1,500 Rand off on our leading lens enhancements, such as drive light lenses that reduce artificial glare whilst driving. Book online or call your nearest store today. Affordable eye care, Specsavers. T's and C's apply.
From city streets to dirt trails, introducing the new Isuzu MU-X. Sleek enough for the city, tough enough for the mountains. With advanced all-terrain drive, 360-degree camera, and upgraded suspension to take on any journey. The new Isuzu MU-X, now including the new Onyx XT. It's an SUV with 4x4 capabilities, ready for anything. Experience the new Isuzu MU-X at your nearest dealership today.
If you think you cannot afford a lawyer, think again. Clientele Legal has made professional legal services affordable for you. Whether it's a civil, criminal, or labor-related matter, we have a nationwide panel of attorneys standing by to assist you. SMS SAFM to 32195. That's SAFM to 32195 and we'll call you back. Clientele General is a licensed non-life insurer and an authorized FSP. Standard rates and terms and conditions apply.
It's a tough day for Mark. Tight deadlines and challenges everywhere. But Mark can rest easy, because when he bought his Hino 700 2845 truck tractor, he received a complimentary service plan covering up to 210,000 kilometers for short haul and up to 280,000 kilometers for long haul. Nice one, Mark. Visit your dealer today to find out more about this limited time offer. Hino, all the way. T's and C's apply.
Economic news on SAFM. Facts and figures you can count on.
Tell you what, I've been having this chat off air with our technical producer, Tomelo, and we're talking about just how hectic the show is. Well, it is by its very nature hectic, and we don't compromise for that, because that's exactly why we need you to listen, or you'd want to listen, because it's the National Pulse. How else do we reflect the changes that happens every 5 minutes on the show? Right. Having said all of that, let's get to the business issues. The SAFM market update coming up in, 6 o'clock. In fact, to set the scene is Jimmy Moyao, who hosts the show. Jimmy, you want to tease it along with the story about Vodacom. Tell me about that.
Good afternoon, Ashraf. Good afternoon to the listeners. Yes, the Vodacom massive deal. That deal went through to the Competition Commission. It was rejected. It got so bad that the Minister of Trade, Industry and Competition got involved and tried to figure out why it was rejected. There was a lot of talk around that deal being good for business and good for the state of fibre and connectivity in the country. And we finally have some clarity from the tribunal. That is, of course, the Competition Tribunal that provided the rejection. They provided us with the reasons for that rejection. We're going to unpack those reasons, because I, for one, am interested to see what they saw as problematic with the deal, when a lot of the other stakeholders in the conversation had said that this was a good deal. So we're going to unpack that and see if we can make sense of it and see where it puts us from here going forward, and what we can look forward to, hopefully, around that deal. Then we've got a conversation with the team at Standard Bank around understanding the business of art. They are, of course, one of the main sponsors at the National Arts Festival that takes place in Makhanda, and they have a very strong passion for art. We're going to speak to them around that and the investing in the arts that they've done over the last 40 years. Then we've got a conversation with Lyndon Burns of Plain Talking around the state of South African airports. This is particularly interesting because earlier this week, the Airports Company South Africa announced that they would be investing several billions of rands into making sure that our airports are upgraded and maintain world-class standards. But at the same time, we know that it has been quite a challenge with everything from navigation systems not working properly to fuel shortage issues and all sorts of other things that have plagued airports of late. We're going to take a look at this, and we're going to take a look at what it actually means for the South African economy, because at the end of the day, for some people that are coming to visit South Africa, the airport is the only way, or the first way, that they can get into the country aside from the land borders. So it's quite an important point for us from an economy point of view. We're going to look at that and see where we stand on that conversation. And then we're going to take a look at the the creativity that goes into building a brand with the team at South African Breweries. If you remember, they are, of course, celebrating that 130-year mark this year, and we're going to take a look at what it is that they put into some of their biggest brands and how their brands stay in our minds for so long. And then we're going to wrap up the conversation with an SME. We spotlight small businesses on Thursdays as much as we can so that the South African public knows more about these businesses and can continue to support the businesses. This week we've got the founder of a company called Blom Stories. We will be chatting to her a little later on about how she built the business and why she built the business. But before we get to that, the news of the day around the markets has been that markets seemingly are on steadier footing, understanding that, of course, this conversation could take a very quick turn at any moment in time. But for now, we will take the steady footing. Asian markets were by and large in the red, with the exception of the Nikkei. That was up 1.6%. The Hang Seng was down 0.2%. And if we look at European markets, they were all in the green. Biggest gainer there on the day was the DAX, up 0.2%. The Nasdaq and the S&P are currently up about 0.2%. And the All Share closed up 0.7%. The top 40 up 0.7%. Resources leading that, 2.6% to the green. Industrials 0.5% up. Financials 0.5% down. If we look at the major commodities that would have moved the resource counters, platinum pricing almost at $1,400 a fine ounce. They're a very good day for platinum, $1,395 at the moment. Palladium, $1,138. Oil prices coming back down. They're below $70 at $68.60 odd a barrel. The gold price is also kind of steady, moderating, $3,323 a fine ounce. At some point today, we had gotten to about $3,350, but not much more beyond that. The rand holding steady against the major currencies, giving back a bit of ground against the US dollar, 17 rand 80 at the moment. 1 British pound, 24 rand 46. 1 euro, 20 rand 84. 1 Australian dollar, 11 rand 65. 1 Bitcoin, $107,000. That in rand terms is now more than 1.9 million rand, just over 1.903 million rand. Not the 2 million rand mark yet, but we could potentially be headed back towards that number. I have the pleasure of speaking to a good friend, Simon Brown, on markets later on tonight. I want to get his thoughts around what's been happening all over the world and just how markets have been reacting to the various tensions. But of course, that conversation comes after the 6 p.m. news. For now, Ashraf, back to you.
All right, thanks for that, Jimmy. Right, enjoy your show 6 to 7, followed by Tumi in the hot sports seat, as you would imagine, right? Okay, now we're going to get to you because I need to hear what you feel. You're on the pulse. Let's hear you.
Ashraf Garda is streaming live now on Facebook, YouTube, and X at SAFM Radio.
This week on Off-Pitch Goals, having been a defensive rock for the Perfeni Glamour Boys, Kaizer Chiefs, Jomo Cosmos and SuperSport United, Morgan Gould goes from threading passes to selling the most stylish threads in urban streetwear. He takes us through the rigors of the fashion industry, tackling design, manufacturing and retail. Streaming on SABC Plus and SABC Sport on DTT Channel 4 on Saturday 28 June at 8:30 p.m. Off-Pitch Goals, where we showcase how the stars score in business. Brought to you by SABC Sport.
CFI, a global leader in online trading, is now in South Africa. Access 15,000 plus instruments, currencies, stocks, metals, crypto CFDs, indices, futures, and more on world-class platforms. Enjoy zero pip spreads, no commission fees, and 24/7 support for confident trading. Visit CFI.trade for a secure, transparent trading experience. Don't miss the National Pulse with Ashraf Garda, Tuesdays at 16:45. Proudly sponsored by CFI, CFI Financial, an authorized financial services provider. T's and C's apply.
The National Arts Festival is back. South Africa's biggest celebration of the arts is on. From the 26th of June to the 6th of July, Makhanda becomes the stage for South Africa's boldest theatre, dance, music, arts, comedy, and more. Experience the creative energy, markets, exhibitions, and many surprises. It's where the country comes to create and the world takes notice. Browse the program and book now at nationalartsfestival.co.za. Own it, celebrate it, be there. Night Talk with Oliver Dixon.
When leaders need to account, we call on them. When society needs to debate, reflect, and advance, we're here to have the conversation. Join me, Oliver Dixon, on Night Talk every Monday to Thursday from 10 to 12 midnight.
Let's have the conversation. WhatsApp voice notes on 0614 104 107.
So, we've had some people saying, hey, when are you going to put up the podcast of the conversations we've had today on the show? That includes that with the DA spokesperson, as well as the representative from Zambia, remember that, as well as the one with Tony Ehrenreich, amongst many other things about the Freedom Charter. Let me tell you, normally with Vusani, who hosts our whole digital and social media platforms, it's like ASAP. So it should be up there already. And if it's not up there, I can tell you now, it's going to be up there within the next few minutes, both on the X platform or Twitter or Facebook, definitely on SAFM.co, the SAFM website. So just check it out. Right, I need to hear what you have to say, okay? And naturally, there's lots of thoughts about now what the former DA, Deputy Minister of Trade and Industry, goodness, this world is very short.
Hi, Ashraf. It's Kevin here. Look, I'm actually sitting here and just laughing at oneself. Because suddenly the DA is actually reminded today, simply because their deputy minister is fired. Suddenly they are reminded as to how useless the ANC is, how useless Ramaphosa is, and how many corrupt ministers under the ANC banner we have. It's a joke, really. It's a joke, and all what they need to do now is just to sit down, keep quiet. Because they are also part and parcel of this whole mess. They are in this GNU with the ANC. It's only now that they are seeing the rot within the ANC simply because their deputy minister is fired. They just need to take a chill pill, sit down and keep quiet.
Take a chill pill.
Thanks.
Wow. Okay, whether they're going to take your advice, I don't know, chill pill or not. But I'll tell you what, here's an interesting thought, okay? I mean, it's largely directed to the ANC because they've been the party of government for 3 decades, right? But how many cabinet ministers of the ANC have at some stage or the other have had, fingers pointed at them around issues of incompetence or corruption? Just think about this. I don't have the number. It'll be an interesting exercise, isn't it? Now, here's one from Kgosi Ashraf. The the president was influenced by Ronald Lamola to fire that gentleman. Till today, it doesn't make sense why he places Lamola in the cabinet positions that he doesn't qualify for. From Kgosi, okay? And there's another one about the GNU.
Good afternoon, Dr. Ashraf. Dr. Ashraf, this shows clearly that it's you scratch my back and I scratch yours. If you don't scratch mine, then we're going to have a problem. Clearly, there is unfit people in that parliament. Now that the person that belongs to the DA has been touched on the studio, now they are saying, please touch everybody in the studio. Icon. Yarr! We are being led by clueless people in this country.
But I mean, to be fair, I don't speak on behalf of the DA. They've had lots of arguments with the ANC this 1 year. Think about it, not just this one. There's been so many. Here's another.
Good afternoon, Ashraf. Good afternoon to the listeners of SAFM. I think the decision that's taken by the President Cyril Ramaphosa, he's thinking that he'll bring his dignity as if Cyril Ramaphosa is a strong and powerful president, while we know that Cyril Ramaphosa is a weak president. I think the DA must go out on the GNU, then we bring the MK, then we're going to table the motion of no confidence against Cyril Ramaphosa because he don't have a direction of leadership.
Seriously?
Thank you.
Is that going to happen? The DA is on record. They don't want those other two parties in the GNU, and I think the ANC understands the risks that they have in that. It's probably a question I'm going to ask to Matthew Sposa tomorrow because, he's my fireside chat guest tomorrow from 5 to 6. So do not miss that. Matthew Sposa, one question to you. You can prep for it in advance. Here's another.
I'm curious, on whose behalf did this deputy minister go to the United States for? On behalf of the DA or on behalf of the president? On whose behalf? And what did he discuss there? Why did he go there?
Well, what we're not clear about is whether he went on a holiday or a business trip. We don't know that. I know I didn't ask it either, but maybe that's less important. He was certainly not sent by the president. Think about shades of the MK party and what happened with their Secretary General just a few weeks ago.
Hi, Ashraf. You know, that was a missed opportunity there with that DA minister to further probe as to what that visit to the US was about and what were the outcomes. If it was regarding only DA matters, is it DA matters that was for the benefit of the country, and how did that visit benefit the country? I think you should have further probed that part of his statement that he visited another country.
I mean, I hear you. Let me just tell you my thinking there. Whatever the benefit of the country was, if the president believes that he went without permission, then it doesn't really matter, does it? That's really the issue. Does the president allow it or not? And is he upset enough to want to dismiss a person? On the other hand, timing or time for us is always an issue. I can tell you now, we took 2.5 minutes extra in that conversation earlier on to talk to him because it was that important early on and then later on. So time factors are always a big issue in terms of where we are. But I certainly hear what you're saying. But the truth is, even if they convince you that he went for a very good reason, that's really not the conversation at this point in time.
Hi, Ashraf. Ocamp, when he talks about Dr. Leon Schwaber as doing excellent work, he's also being disingenuous in that they are not acknowledging Motsoaledi's work that he has done there. They go around commissioning projects that were started and initiated by Motsoaledi in a meaningful way, and now all of a sudden they come and claiming all the credit.
Which political party praises the leaders of the other party? Just think about it seriously.
The DA is one word. It's 2 words. Good governance.
Yeah, the DA spokesperson is talking very well there. But now, when they table the motion of no confidence against Tata Morero, did they ever consult with the ANC? That's the question that he must answer. Did they consult with the ANC? And they don't even request the reinstatement of their minister. Why they can't ask for a replacement? I think
yeah, I mean, you see, that's my point, that in terms of the president, the appointments of cabinet ministers, it's a prerogative of the president. This is a deputy, so he's not, in fact, the deputy minister is not part of cabinet, by the way, ironically, right? But you'd think that to say that the 48-hour ultimatum should be, there's no reason why you fired him, you need to reinstate him. I see that's not on the agenda. Interesting. Here's one, Ashraf, it's Vusi Lushaba in Durban. I'm listening to this DA national spokesperson saying a lot of nothing. The question is simple. They have given Ramaphosa 48 hours to adhere to their demands, or else what? Or else they will call another FedEx meeting to discuss what, with a question mark and exclamation mark. We all know they will never leave the coalition. That ship is long sailed. The threat is not even worth the platform. It's being barked on. Nonsense. Well, I must tell you, Brucey, I tend to agree with you about it. In fact, I said that before. That ship has indeed sailed, right? Here's another.
Ashraf, good afternoon. I believe Ramaphosa's action against Whitfield is to protect what is currently happening with Parks Tau and the appointment of the lottery license, the appointment of those businessmen to run the lottery. And that is the reason why Whitfield is going to have to go.
I wonder why you think so. You know, there's the counter argument, nothing to do with Whitfield, that says actually we don't need deputy ministers at all. Like, they're not even cabinet ministers. They can't make decisions. Why do we even have them? That's a separate conversation. Totally. What about the DG? That's really where the engine room is, right?
Hi, Ashraf. Great show. The issue of ministers traveling without permission and the consequences it's not something new. If you recall, Nelson Mandela once fired Winnie Mandela after she had traveled to West Africa without permission. And when she said, her firing was not procedural because she hadn't consulted Buthelezi, who was also part of the government of national unity, Mandela reinstated her for a day, consulted with Buthelezi, and then fired her again. So, the consequences seem to be clear if you travel without the president's permission. So I don't know why the DA is crying foul.
See, the DA is claiming...
Thanks.
The DA is claiming that they had written to the president like 10 days before and there's been no responses. aren't they on the same WhatsApp group? I mean, seriously, man, am I being rather naive?
Hi, Ashraf. The president was 100% correct. He's right to fire that DA guy. Why did he go to US? He was going to talk nonsense about South Africa. And he was fire all the DA guys in the parliament. And we just bring in Umalema and maybe MK. They must leave the parliament, our government. Thank you. Bye-bye.
Thank you. That's not going to happen. I think we've discussed that before. It's not in the interest of the ANC and the DA to do that, to open the doors for others.
Ashraf, good afternoon. Hey, this DA is so annoying, ne? Their level of sense of entitlement is unbelievable. They don't understand that the president's got powers invested in him by the Constitution to appoint ministers and fire if the person has breached the code of the office. I mean, the person decided to go to America without consulting the president. That is a high level of undermining the president of the country.
Well, that story is going to run. I have no doubt there'll be lots of speculation all day tomorrow. And don't forget that 48-hour deadline, which is unfortunately not in the midst of this show because it'll happen on Saturday, if I've got my maths right. Saturday afternoon somehow will be that deadline. No, man, can't wait for that. Let's see what happens next, right? Okay, that's the show. That's the National Pulse. I think certainly from Temba's point of view and Keys, they already will start plotting and planning as to what we can do over the next 24 hours. Forget 48 hours, because this is the National Pulse. Don't forget Matthew Sposa as a guest tomorrow on the show from 5 to 6. Let's get the news. Here's Greg House.
Thank you again, Ashraf. DA ultimatum over Deputy Minister's firing and scores killed in a stampede in the CAR. Good evening.